playing as Tathagata in Marvel, I suppressed Thanos for 500 years. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 77 The Chinese people have the Chinese soul, the Monkey King is my god. Chapter 77, Chinese soul, Monkey King, my god, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster Chapter 77, Chinese soul, Monkey King, my god. Upon witnessing the success of the moon landing, Chinese netizens had quickly built up a massive online forum, posting numerous comments and discussing the event. That armor, no, that spacesuit, really looks a lot like Iron Man's. Not only the armor, but that figure's an exact replica of Tony Stark. You're kidding. This is a live broadcast of the Chinese moon landing. What does a Chinese astronaut have to do with Iron Man? There are so many people with similar figures. It's just a coincidence. As everyone debated their own opinions, someone jumped out with conviction. As a die-hard Iron Man fan for 10 years, I tell you, that figure is Tony Stark. If not, I'll do a live broadcast of myself eating shit while doing a handstand. This statement stunned everyone. Everyone was drawn in and began to respond. On such a beautiful day, how can I even be in the mood to watch you eat shit? That person upstairs is so confident. Could it really be Tony Stark? Someone else asked curiously. Let's not talk about that person for a moment. Why did you say you were a die-hard fan back then? Aren't you one now? Oh, come on. I'm now completely devoted to the Monkey King, following the lead of the fighting Buda. Shout with me, Chinese people, Chinese soul, the Monkey King is my god. This person's enthusiastic speech was like a stone that stirred up 1,000 waves. Posts that had just been discussing the live broadcast of the moon landing were now entirely devoted to the Monkey King. Many people were curious about whether the ancient world even existed, and Tony Stark was momentarily forgotten. Besides the spontaneous online discussions, following the successful moon landing, all major television stations and news outlets pulled out their signature tricks, launching a wide variety of interviews and reports. A beautiful reporter from the official media had already arrived at the Quanjiu Satellite Command Center. Chief Engineer Zhang Mingyang stood beside her, beaming at the camera. The moment the camera panned to Zhang Yangming, the screen was flooded with comments from netizens. Ahohohoho, this is hilarious. Why do I feel like Teacher Zhang has suddenly aged 10 years after the successful moon landing? Not to mention Teacher Zhang, I also feel the warmth of the corpse, and the skin has become firmer. The live broadcast comments were clearly seen by the beautiful reporter at the command center and Zhang Yangming and other researchers. Zhang Yangming coughed slightly in embarrassment, but he couldn't hide his smile. The beautiful reporter asked with a smile. Teacher Zhang, I won't ask you about your feelings right now about the successful moon landing. I'm sure you're just as excited and proud as I am, and as many Chinese people watching the live broadcast. I'd like to ask you about a question that's of great concern to everyone online. The design of the spacesuits. The specially designed spacesuits for this lunar landing are truly eye-catching. Not only are they visually impressive, but they're also technologically engineered to withstand the effects of lunar magnetic storms. What's the story behind them? Haha, your question really hits home. Actually, there's someone who should be here on this day of national celebration. Because he's the biggest contributor to our successful manned lunar landing, Zhang Yangming said with a smile. He had been thinking about Lin Feng. Just a few days of getting to know him had already given him immense admiration for him. Lin Feng kept his achievements to himself, avoiding the applause on the day of the successful moon landing and quietly continuing his research. He must promote such a spirit, such a noble scholar, and let his spirit and virtues flourish. The biggest contributor? The reporter asked, blinking. Indeed. Professor Lin from Wukong University, I'm sure you're all familiar with him. But what you may not know is that he's not just an expert in ancient history, he's also the designer of this spacesuit. I'd say he invented the most crucial technology, and this technology, conservatively speaking, is 30 years ahead of the international standard. Zhang Yangming's words shook the world. Online discussion erupted, and the live stream went off track. I'm saying, I think the spacesuit design is somewhat similar to Tony Stark's suit, but there are some differences. It seems like some aspects have been completely updated and iterated. This isn't just a copy, it's a complete transcendence. Who the hell is Lin Feng? A god? This is incredible. But where is he now? The reporter at the command center, after a brief moment of surprise, quickly regained her professional composure. She glanced at the comments and asked, "I see many netizens on the barrage want to know Professor Lin Feng's current whereabouts. Is he watching the live broadcast with us?" Zhang Yangming said confidently, smiling. "He must be watching us from some quiet corner." At this moment, Lin Feng on the moon curled his lips as he quietly watched the live broadcast from Earth. The light from the screen cast a faint white glow on his face, illuminating his handsome eyebrows. Lin Feng was now fully prepared, waiting only for his debut. He was surprised to find that Yang Jian was indeed a handsome man. In his Yang Jian costume, he was so suave that he couldn't help but take a second look. He raised an eyebrow, his charming voice echoing across the moon. "The real show hasn't begun yet." CIA. The CIA agents had been working overtime. China's moon landing had kept them busier than ever. Many people had been called back from overseas to deal with the temporary shortage of staff at headquarters. But even after the successful moon landing, even the CIA was captivated by the live broadcast from China. They watched, their emotions unconsciously fluctuating with the progress of the landing. Then, a call from a high-ranking official woke them up. "Within 24 hours, I want all of Lin Feng's information on my desk." "No. I want Lin Feng himself. Bring him to the US immediately." The angry voice of the higher-up seemed to still echo through the CIA. The agents were in agony. "Let's not even think about abducting Professor Lin Feng. Someone of his rank would surely be protected by China's most elite security personnel." Even obtaining Lin Feng's information wasn't so easy. They had investigated before, but the information was simply too limited. It could be said that Lin Feng's information was like his research on ancient history, probably as exclusive and top secret. By then, the CIA agents were in agony, each considering whether to resign and simply move to China. On the moon, several astronauts had been walking on the lunar surface for about a quarter of an hour. They were deeply shocked by the scenery of the moon. They saw a vast and barren land surrounded by unprecedented soil and climate. The rolling craters and the strange and magnificent pits made them feel both odd and familiar. Zhou Hao, who was in the lead, looked at the scene in front of him, and a strange feeling arose spontaneously. For some reason, on this land where no one had ever set foot, he felt a sense of historical vastness, a sense of historical heaviness that only the Chinese could understand. Could it be that this land was really an ancient wasteland? Zhou Hao's heart was pounding. He stepped more cautiously on the lunar soil, gently as if he was afraid of disturbing some sleeping god. At this time, his companion beside him whispered, "Look, there's a light." Chapter 78. A miracle is just around the corner. Chapter 78, Miracles are at hand, 2024-08-19. Author, Good Monster. Chapter 78, Miracles are at hand. Chapter 77, Miracles are at hand. Zhou Hao looked forward and saw a vast, lightless land with a faint flash of white light in the distance. The light seemed to be waving hope to them, and the four astronauts were all excited when they saw the white light. "Let's go and take a look," Zhou Hao said, quickening his pace. Tony Stark was left behind. He had just discovered the light first. At this moment, he stared blankly at the light ahead, somewhat intimidated. Could China really be the light of civilization? Were they really about to find the primitive land? As an American, Tony Stark had a complicated mood for a moment. But no matter what, his curiosity and desire for the power wielded by Sun Wukong and Tathagata Buddha gave him strength in his current confusion. Nothing could hold him back. If he could witness that overwhelming power again, he would give it all. At this moment, hearts around the world followed the footsteps of the four astronauts. If the successful lunar landing was the first climax, then the discovery of the distant white light brought this great journey of human exploration to a new peak. People from all over the world held their breath, waiting to witness the upcoming truth. And the Chinese internet was abuzz with discussion. The Great Desolate Continent. Is that the Great Desolate Continent just ahead? Oh my god, why is it so laggy? My video is stuck frame by frame, and the comments are turning into snow. I want to see the Great Desolate Continent firsthand. It's lagging too. I can't watch it. There are so many people, my Weibo is numb. At this moment, Zhang Minggang, at the Quanzhou Satellite Command Center, also held his breath. He stared at the light on the big screen, his chest heaving uncontrollably. Zhang Minggang could guarantee that the footage the viewers were seeing on the live stream wouldn't be as clear as what they were seeing on the control center's giant screen, nor would it be as stunning as what the astronauts were witnessing firsthand. How could there be light on the moon? Their previous exploration photos hadn't captured anything like that. That beam of white light, like a torch passed down through generations of humanity, now held the hope that connected all civilizations in the universe. His voice trembled as he issued a command. Zhou Hao, proceed with caution and prioritize your own safety. If anything unusual occurs, please return to the capsule immediately. Roger that. Zhou Hao's voice returned shortly, and he continued. Requesting the use of mobility, permitted. Zhang Minggang agreed. Their conversation reached the viewers, who were momentarily stunned, unable to understand what they were saying, yet a surge of excitement surged within them, their gazes fixed on the screens, unblinking, afraid to miss anything. The next second, the two astronauts, clad in silver-white armor, soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, they were already high in the sky. Oh my god, what happened? Flying, is this a sci-fi movie? The audience watched the live stream in disbelief, their faces flushed with excitement. Meanwhile, the US officials also watching the live stream were less amused. They gritted their teeth as they watched the two astronauts soaring through the air, one of whom looked increasingly familiar. Damn it, just a trifle. The scene quickly switched to the perspective of the astronauts in flight. The two astronauts on the ground looked like two tiny black dots, while the moon, just moments before vast, now resembled a silvery white porcelain plate, faintly tinged with ink, like a fine freehand landscape painting. And that beam of white light, like a night shining pearl, its brilliance undimmed by distance, only to intensify. Is this a circle of light? Zhou Hao had to squint to look directly at the beam of light. He finally understood why one shouldn't look directly at the sun. The light now filled him with an inexplicable awe. The astronauts' vision mirrored the live broadcast from Earth. A massive circle of light, like a garland, quietly blossomed on the lifeless lunar surface. The intensity of the light made it appear at first glance like a ball of light. Netizens were aghast. What is this? Have we discovered the primordial continent? This is unbelievable. Go see what's inside. Zhang Minggang, at the Quanjiu Satellite Command Center, stared at the screen with a frown. Everything before him was beyond his imagination. He could only repeat himself blankly. Zhou Hao, approach slowly and check the situation. Remember, be careful. Roger that. Zhou Hao and the others replied in unison. They descended smoothly from the sky and explained the situation to the other two. Dr. Banner, who had been on the ground until then, noticed Stark's unsteady steps and whispered, "We're almost at the miracle, aren't we?" Stark nodded, then shook his head, speaking in his somewhat shaky Chinese. "I'm not sure. This is all too incredible. Let's go over and take a look. We just estimated the distance in space. It shouldn't be far," Zhou Hao urged. Even in his new spacesuit, one could sense his excitement through his words. Tony and Banner stopped talking. The four of them stood still and simultaneously pressed the buttons on the side of their arms. The audience watching the live broadcast once again held their breath, anticipating what magic tricks they would perform this time. The moment their fingers pressed, a pale blue flame-like substance shot backward from their feet. The four of them, like a maglev train, soared into the air, their feet only 2 adult fists distance from the lunar surface. Some of the viewers on Earth watching the live broadcast had opened their mouths wide enough to fit a fist. The audience felt only a flash before their eyes, and the next second, the astronauts were moving across the lunar surface at high speed. Oh my god, this is amazing. Is this related to Professor Lin Feng? At their speed, they should be able to reach the white light soon. Oh my god, I'm so nervous. Everyone in the world was watching the astronauts' every move. Even the top brass of the United States. How could there be these things on the moon? Did the previous photos show a barren landscape? How can NASA do this? They couldn't even capture such a huge aperture. Amidst the fury of the US brass, NASA cautiously responded. That location might be on the far side of the moon, and we haven't been able to capture a full view of it yet. Chapter 79 Who's Coming? Chapter 79, Who's Coming? 2024-08-19 Author, Guigui Monster. Chapter 79, Who's Coming? Chapter 78, Ancient Temple? They stared at the astronauts as they drew closer and closer to the white light, unable to do anything. A sense of powerlessness washed over them. Is this China's fate? Is the United States destined for a downward spiral? If China truly succeeded, it would be a slap in the face to the US government. After all, they had claimed to be the first nation to land on the moon, yet they found nothing. The US government had dominated the world for so long, but now, facing China's global live broadcast of the moon landing, US officials felt their hearts pounding, unable to face what was about to happen. They watched as the astronauts on the screen gradually drew closer to the aperture. Suddenly, a cry of surprise rang out from the screen. It came from an astronaut, speaking in his own accented Chinese. "This seems like there's something in the aperture," another astronaut added. "We can't see clearly. The light is as blazing as sunlight. We can't get any closer." The image zoomed in, and for a moment, the massive screen in front of the American officials was filled with an intense white light. Caught off guard, their eyes stung by the blinding light, and they all closed their eyes. "What the hell?" one of the officials cursed, still trembling with fear. They all squinted. The white light that had just burst onto the screen seemed to have a life of its own, flickering and shimmering, as if it could surge out from the screen and reach out towards them. At that moment, everyone watching the live broadcast around the world simultaneously closed their eyes. The barrage of comments suddenly decreased, and everyone shouted in amazement at the dazzling brightness of this ancient light from the moon. Zheng Mingayang in the command center also instinctively closed his eyes, along with all the researchers watching on the screen. But he quickly reacted and shouted, "Pull out. The strong light might be impactful. Don't hurt the audience." Zheng Mingayang gave the astronauts another order. "Zhou Hao, proceed with caution. Do not venture in rashly." Zheng Mingayang's urgent voice echoed through the livestream, resonating in everyone's ears. This voice cast a solemn and awe-inspiring veil over everyone's hearts. Netizens quickly suppressed their memes and excitement, watching the astronauts' movements on screen with bated breath. Zheng Mingayang's clear and precise instructions also reached the astronauts. But now, as if possessed, they all stood frozen outside the aperture, no one moving. A moment later, one of the astronauts finally took a step, but instead of quickly retreating, they moved forward slowly and steadily. Another astronaut followed suit, and then another. As if summoned by some unknown force, all the astronauts moved resolutely towards the aperture. Zhou Hao's heart pounded. He vaguely saw something within the aperture. "What is that?" "I see something within the aperture." The audience watching the live stream also witnessed a strange sight before their eyes, holding their breath, their eyes fixed on it. "There's a wooden door ahead," Tony Stark exclaimed, his excitement overflowing. Just as he was about to take a few steps closer to the aperture, Zhou Hao pulled him back. "Why is there a wooden door here?" "What's going on?" Zhou Hao continued cautiously. "We'd better proceed with caution." Everyone stared at the wooden door before them. It was a massive gate woven from vines, slithering like dragons and snakes. A rainbow of light enveloped the door, emitting a holy aura. In front of the door were silvery white stone steps paved with huge stones. The light from the door reflected on the steps, and the stream of light surged towards the astronauts standing before it like a torrent. The four of them couldn't help but move forward. The soft light emanating from within the door was like a call from ancient ruins. Zheng Mingayang at the satellite command center was overcome with excitement at the scene before them. With trembling hands, he picked up the intercom and spoke. "Zhou Hao, approach slowly and confirm the surroundings are clear before proceeding." Zheng Mingayang stared at the screen in front of him. He heard his own voice echo back to the moon 2 seconds later. Zhou Hao and the others, seemingly absorbed in the spectacle before them, were suddenly awakened by his voice. Roger that. Safe, prepare to enter." The astronaut's excited voice reached everyone. Everyone shared his anticipation. What was behind that door? Zheng Mingayang took a deep breath and gave a decisive order. "Approach the door now. Proceed with extreme caution." "Yes," the astronauts replied in unison. Their voices echoed across the empty moon. With firm steps and beating hearts, the astronauts approached the wooden door. No one knew what lay beyond it. But no one had any foreboding before the vine-wrapped, almost living door. Countless eyes on Earth followed the astronauts' steps. People from all regions, of all colors and ages, were captivated by the wooden door before them. Even the highest echelons of the United States were moved. At this moment, their instinctive human curiosity and thirst for knowledge caused them to pause, their gazes fixed on the screen, anticipating what was to come. The live stream's barrage of comments scrolled relentlessly. "I'm almost choking. What's behind this door? Could opening this door lead to the prehistoric continent? Could it be Pandora's box? I'm so scared. What's there to be afraid of? If there really was any danger, Professor Lin Feng would have told me long ago." As netizens anxiously debated, the astronauts drew closer to the wooden door. The image on the screen, after all, couldn't compare to what the naked eye could see. Tony Stark looked up at the wooden door before him. He could clearly see the veins of the green vines, so distinct they resembled the lines on a palm, as if they spoke of the traces of history. Emerald green leaves held glistening dewdrops, gleaming brilliantly in the sunlight. Each tiny drop seemed to harbor countless rainbows, radiating with the light, bursting forth with a brilliance that illuminated the heavens and the earth. To think there's such lush greenery on the moon. Calling it the Tree of Life wouldn't be an exaggeration, Tony Stark exclaimed, stunned by what he saw. The audience watching the live stream practically glued their eyes to the screens. This is so beautiful. I feel like my soul is being healed. This is just a door, yet it possesses such power. I can't even imagine what lies beyond it. At that moment, the light vanished, the screen went black, and the moon returned to its previous dim state. What the hell? Joha and his companions had just been bathed in a rainbow of light when the sky and earth suddenly changed color, leaving them gazing around in disbelief. At this time, a little fire came from the place where the wooden door disappeared. The fire suddenly connected into one, and the fire that spread to the sky illuminated the moon again. What appeared before people's eyes was an ancient temple. Chapter 80, Explore the Wilderness, the power is shocking. Chapter 80, Exploring the Great Wilderness, Shaking Power, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 80, Exploring the Great Wilderness, Shaking Power. What is this? Joha stared at the scene before him in disbelief. The wooden door vanished, and a temple suddenly appeared before him. Everything before him was so overwhelming that he almost wondered if he had seen all the wonders of a lifetime. A temple, or rather, a building that looked like a temple from the outside, but no deities were enshrined within. Instead, it was like layers of mist, obscuring the true nature of what lay within. From the outside, it was an antique Chinese building, its golden tiles stretching endlessly like the back of a dragon king. The red brick walls were the purest vermilion, proclaiming majesty and solemnity to the worshippers. Inside, the building resembled a grand hall, with no horizon visible above and no pedestrians around. The scene suddenly changed, and everyone fell silent. The fear of the unknown and the unprecedented sights repeatedly assaulted their minds. After a while, the people watching the live stream gradually regained their composure. Each of them could fit an entire egg in their mouths. Even those whose eyes were usually barely slits could now clearly see the live stream. This must be the Great Desolation continent. It's just so different from what I imagined. I feel like gods live there. Are we about to see gods? There's more to the Great Desolation continent than just gods. I need to stabilize my heart rate. My rice bracelet is telling me it's too high. The people in the command center were at a loss for words. They were mortals after all, and the scene before them was filled with the same surprise as Granny Liu encountering the Grand View Garden. They had expected a surprising encounter before coming here, but they hadn't expected to find themselves in an environment that looked like a temple, but inside felt like a grand hall. They felt a sense of transcendence, a sense of celestiality. But this feeling wasn't a good one. There are always people beyond our reach, and beyond the heavens. If this truly was related to the Great Desolation, the slightest mistake could lead to dangers beyond their immediate control. Several astronauts held hands as the mist slowly dissipated, revealing the hall's original form. They hesitated to act rashly, but just as they were about to see the hall clearly, a flash of fire streaked across the sky, leaving a massive crater on the ground like a falling star. Amidst the thick smoke, the astronauts had barely time to react before the sky before them seemed suffused with a bloody hue. The crimson light, like a thunderbolt from the sky, had suddenly appeared in the distance and, in the blink of an eye, was directly before them. Joha only had time to let out more brief cry. Before he could even dodge, the crimson light was already rushing towards him, bathing the astronauts in crimson like a shower of red rain. What's going on? Everyone watching the live stream shuddered at the sight on their screens. The sudden onset of the crimson light was like the Grim Reaper's scythe, leaving no blade of grass in its path. Even those watching from the screen could sense its overwhelming power and intimidation. No one dared to move, not even daring to look away from the screen, fearing the red light would pierce through it and rush towards them. Everyone gasped in shock. Some even dropping their phones. What was happening? What was that thing? How could one sense such pressure even through the screen? Zheng Minggang, in the command center, stared frantically at the massive screen before him. The red light shone through it, painting the entire hall a blood red. Even Zhang Mingyang's glasses reflected the red glow. "Zhou Hao, get out! Get out!" Zhang Mingyang shouted frantically, finally hearing his own voice from the other side of the screen. A single second could mean the difference between life and death. Shocked by the red light, Zhou Hao and the others were awakened by Zhang Mingyang's roar. They trembled, attempting to escape from the overwhelming pressure of the red light, but a desperate thought washed over them. But, how do we get back? Though they still stood on the surface of the moon, the grand hall before them, the sprawling temples beyond, and the crimson light that stained the sky and earth all betrayed their outsider status. Most importantly, the door was gone. That wooden door, shimmering with vines, leaves, and dewdrops, a symbol of life, had vanished. Someone muttered in despair. "I can't go back." Tony Stark had never felt so insignificant before, but now he felt like an ant, defenseless before the cosmic shift. He might be killed instantly, before he could even utter a sound. Director Pierce and Nick Fury of SHIELD watched this scene with a bittersweet feeling. They had already determined that Tony Stark was one of the astronauts. It seemed he would pay the price for his recklessness and betrayal of the United States. But the scene before them left them with mixed feelings. Even Tony Stark was a mere ant before such a vision, let alone them. The U.S. high-ranking officials, however, didn't dwell on it too much. Initially shocked by the menacing red light, they now felt a surge of relief and gloom at the impending tragedy. Thank goodness we're not the first to land on the moon. Haha, if China wants to be first, then let them go. Zhang Mingyang in the command center stared at the scene before him, exhausted. Could it be, their astronauts can't escape this time? The red light that now permeated and dominated the entire sky was relentless, unmoved by human will, unheeding the people's prayers and ignoring any scornful mirth. The fiery crimson light shot towards the astronauts like an arrow, and this time everyone could see it clearly. The red light, like an arrow, shot straight at the astronauts' heads. "Run!" Zhang Mingyang shouted. Like everyone else watching the livestream, all he could do at this moment was shout and pray. But they couldn't understand why the astronauts on the screen seemed completely motionless. They stared blankly at the red light before them, their necks stiff, as if stunned by what they saw. The red light enveloped the astronauts, and they felt as if they had stepped into the realm of death. There was nowhere to escape, nowhere to hide. Faced with such a disparity in power, any attempt to escape was futile, a mere struggle before death. Tony Stark closed his eyes, a sense of peace even forming within him. Those in human history who have sacrificed their lives exploring the untamed continent, that's not bad at all. The scorching heat washed over him, but he faced what was about to happen fearlessly. Yet, time seemed to stand still at this moment, and the anticipated pain never arrived. Everyone watching the livestream stared in shock. They clearly saw the red light approaching, and the astronauts closed their eyes in despair. But in that moment, the scene changed drastically. "Look!" Zhou Hao shouted, and Tony Stark and the others opened their eyes. As soon as they opened their eyes, they were nearly forced to close them again by the brilliant light before them. The dim sky completely changed color. Instead of the blood-red hue of before, it was now a dazzling golden light. The sudden golden light dominated the sky with a force that could shatter the heavens. The previous red light was like a snarling earthworm, powerless against the golden light that soared across the sky like a soaring dragon. What's going on? Where did the golden light come from? The astronauts stared in amazement, their bewilderment instantly replaced by ecstasy. They had survived. They had survived again. It was this glittering golden light that had saved them. Chapter 81 The Battle Between Two Lights, The Might of China. Chapter 81, Two Lights Clash, The Might of China, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster Chapter 81, Two Lights Clash, The Might of China. Tony Stark looked toward the fairy mountain and saw that the once brightly lit temple on the mountain now shone as bright as day. An intense golden glow and a kind of pressure they couldn't quite understand emanated from the mountain. He excitedly exclaimed, "The golden light is coming from the temple. It was the temple that saved us." Yes. This temple was originally transformed from a wooden door. A vibrant smile blossomed on the astronauts' faces. They gazed at the golden light in the sky, feeling a mixture of awe and gratitude. At this moment, their faces were once again enveloped by a red glow. The red light that had been dissipated by the golden light melted into a ball of light. The ball of light that nurtured the red light gradually grew larger, and the golden light was gradually forced back by the expansion of the ball, and its brilliance dimmed. Everyone watched the changes before their eyes with bated breath, especially the astronauts within. They faintly heard a rumbling sound from the distant sky, a sound like the creator's roar, sending panic through the ears. What is going on? Zhou Hao asked in panic, his voice trembling. Could it be that even the heavens and the earth fear the power of this red light? Tony Stark's voice was hoarse. He stared at the ball of light before him, his heart nearly stopping. A deep sense of unease washed over him. At that moment, from the ball of light, 1,000 feet of red light radiated outward. Countless rays of red light, like billions of arrows, pierced through the golden light that had already surrounded them. For a moment, the sky was painted a golden red hue. Amidst the already dazzling golden sky, a radiance like the crimson sun burst forth, its intense color dazzling the eyes of the astronauts and the audience watching the live broadcast. However, the celestial phenomena changed rapidly, and the golden light shone brightly in response, so blinding that everyone saw only a bright white before their eyes, and hurriedly closed their eyes. The golden light continued to devour the red light with unstoppable force, while the red light transformed into thousands of long swords, piercing and penetrating the golden light with unbridled force. For a moment, the sky and the earth changed color, sometimes golden, sometimes red. As everyone watched the celestial phenomena intently, a red light suddenly rushed towards the astronauts with destructive force. "Be careful," everyone watching the live broadcast shouted in unison, but it was too late. The red light rushed towards them with overwhelming force, and the astronauts didn't even have time to blink. Even as the astronauts braced themselves for the red light's scorching heat, death slipped away from them. Tony Stark opened his eyes and said in disbelief. Nothing happened. Zhou Hao carefully examined the red light. He tentatively reached out to touch it, but found that his hand had passed through it. "It's an illusion," he said with certainty. "Could this be a celestial phenomenon from ancient times?" Dr. Banner speculated. "I think so. It's probably something like a mirage. The images from that time have survived, so we can see it today." Tony Stark nodded thoughtfully. He looked up at the sky, barely daring to blink, afraid to miss this once-in-a-lifetime spectacle. A sense of transcendent relief washed over him. In such a volatile situation, where life was in constant danger, he felt a sense of peace. Witnessing such a scene, he had no regrets. This sense of regretlessness even made him forget life and death. The audience watching the live broadcast on Earth were also stunned by the scene before them. This moon landing is truly worth it. This kind of sight is unprecedented on Earth. This truly is the ancient land. We've found it, right? As everyone watched the two beams of light intertwine and battle like long dragons in the sky, the ground shook violently, and the astronauts felt as if they were not standing on the ground, but on a sailboat on a huge wave. Their bodies shook violently, and for a moment, like a toddler learning to walk, their legs losing support, they struggled to keep from falling, a feat that alone consumed all their energy. They realized clearly that this time, the ground shaking was no longer an illusion. Just as the astronauts gradually adjusted to the ground shaking and wanted to look up at the sky, suddenly, two lights flashed simultaneously, and at the same time, a roar from the sky was heard again. With a sound that could shatter human eardrums, the world shattered. In the blink of an eye, a deep black chasm appeared on the lunar surface. This scene undoubtedly stirred a wave of shock in the hearts of the audience watching the live broadcast. "Oh my God, what kind of power could be so?" As a military enthusiast, I feel our current weapons are far from capable of this kind of power. The astronauts are so pitiful. I can't see their faces, but if it were me, I'd have turned pale with fear. Zhou Hao felt his legs trembling. He was closest to the cracks. The lunar surface shattered before his eyes, and although he was fortunate not to fall into them, an indelible shadow had already fallen over his heart. He tore his gaze away from the cracks and looked up at the sky. To his surprise, the golden and red lights seemed to enter a half-time break, their brightness softening. But a sense of impending storm settled in everyone's heart. Sure enough, the red light that had been radiating like a stream of light suddenly gathered, transforming into a red ball of light, while the golden light gathered like a long dragon, winding like a golden river. At that moment, a crimson ball of light and a golden, galaxy-like band of light formed in the sky. They expanded violently against each other, one growing and the other shrinking, yet, as if intertwined, they stretched endlessly, forming a counterbalancing force. Wait a minute. If the golden and red lights reach a certain equilibrium, will they collide forever, unstoppable? Zhou Hao suddenly realized this and shouted. If that were the case, wouldn't they be stuck here watching the golden and red lights intertwine and collide for the rest of their lives? Possibly, Tony Stark pondered. As their words fell, the golden and red balls of light clashed once more, creating a deafening crash. The astronauts felt a ringing in their ears and dizziness. They lowered their heads to calm down, then slowly opened their eyes. They saw that the red ball had split in two, creating a new red ball of light. The audience watching the live broadcast stared in disbelief. It can be like this. Isn't this too amazing? The two identical crimson balls of light spun rapidly, their speed increasing. So fast that the naked eye could only see a red halo in the sky, but could not see the balls themselves. At this moment, the light shone brightly, and after a flash that everyone closed their eyes to avoid, the ball and the band of light suddenly converged, and the sky suddenly became a golden red. Zhou looked at everything on the sky, the intense light bringing tears to his eyes. The gold and red seemed to merge into one, you and me and you. A dazzling golden red fireball appeared in everyone's sight. The next second, the fireball spun rapidly, the gold and red intertwining like a burning sun, and the ground shook violently again. This time, it was not only the ground that shook, but also the immortal mountain that had always stood firm. Chapter 82 7th Layer of Barrier. Chapter 82 7 Layer Barrier 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster Chapter 82 7 Layer Barrier. The golden bricks and tiles of the temple on the fairy mountain trembled, and rubble and debris fell down the mountain like a waterfall. The astronauts hurried to avoid it. They had to be careful to avoid the falling rocks from the fairy mountain, and they had to be careful behind them to avoid stepping on empty air and falling into the 1,000-foot crack. The audience watching the live broadcast were all worried for them. The stirring sound of bells and drums came from the temple. The sound was like thousands of bells ringing together, and the sound could be heard directly by the heavens. The deep bells rang rapidly and agitatedly, as if warning of something. For a moment, everyone was on high alert to what was about to happen. Suddenly, a powerful white light erupted from the fairy mountain, sweeping across the land like a raging tsunami. The sky and the earth were ablaze, and the astronauts felt as if their vision had been deprived, their vision blackened. They didn't know if there was something wrong with their eyes, or if the world had completely lost its color. They closed their eyes and rubbed them repeatedly. The overwhelming white light had been too intense, irritating their eyes. The audience watching the live broadcast had become the astronauts' eyes. Zheng Mingyang from the command center said, Zhou, you may have been stimulated by the strong light. Don't worry, wait until it recovers. The most important thing now is not to move around. You're too close to the rift, okay? The astronauts gently closed their eyes, and upon hearing this, they became even more cautious. Tony Stark, unable to suppress his curiosity, asked anxiously. What happened after the white light just now? Zheng Mingyang stared at the scene on the screen in amazement. Hearing this question, he began to doubt his own eyes. What kind of divine power was this? The astronauts didn't hear a response for a moment. The pain in their eyes gradually faded, and they opened their eyes one by one. What they saw was beyond their imagination. Above the fairy mountain, outside the temple, a soft white light shone like a barrier, enveloping the mountain tightly. If the white light that had just erupted from the fairy mountain was a nuclear weapon, then the white barrier now was a top-level defense. A rainbow of colors streamed across the white barrier, and it was this reflection that allowed the astronauts to clearly see that the barrier consisted of more than one layer. 1, 2, 3, 4. They counted carefully, finding a total of 7 barriers. The gaps between the 7 barriers were not large, but the shifting colors of the rainbow light made the subtle gaps visible. Why is this barrier here? Tony Stark suppressed his exclamation, his disbelief so intense that he felt a sense of helplessness. Such a powerful white light, capable of changing the color of the world in an instant, was simply a defensive barrier. And there were actually 7 of them. What on earth could possibly require such defense? Boom! Suddenly, countless fireballs plummeted from the sky, and deep, smoking craters appeared on the ground. Look at the sky, Zhou shouted, and they looked up. The rapidly spinning fireballs gave way to 2, 3, and in the blink of an eye, 9 massive fireballs, as blazing as the sun, appeared in the sky. These 9 massive fireballs ignited with golden red flames, burning to their fury, billowing thick smoke. For a moment, the entire sky was filled with golden red flames and gray-black smoke, while smaller fireballs continued to fall from the 9 giant fireballs. Dr. Banner trembled as he watched the scene before him. The heat, unbecoming of the moon, seared them. Even a small fireball can pound deep craters into the ground. If a massive fireball falls, won't it pierce the lunar surface? Forget the lunar surface for now. I think we'd have melted into a puddle the moment the giant fireball approached, Tony Stark said with a wry smile. As he spoke, the hearts of the audience watching the live stream gripped their chests. On the screen, a fiery, slurry-like sky contrasted with a celestial mountain guarded by layers of white light. In this tense scene, 4 tiny astronauts stood on the devastated lunar surface, where even the slightest movement could mean plunging into the abyss. Oh my God, can someone save them? The moon is going to be destroyed. I can't imagine this happening on Earth. No. Never, at least not in our lifetimes. Otherwise, I think it would be the end of the world. The sheer intensity and overwhelming force of the scene cast a pall over everyone's hearts. Some dared not even glance at the live stream. However, this was only the beginning. Boom. A massive fireball suddenly rushed towards the barrier from the sky. The golden red fireball resembled a furious bull with red eyes. The pressure it created as it charged towards the white barrier seemed to cleave the air. The astronauts felt as if time had momentarily stopped, as if they had entered a blazing vacuum. After a moment of suffocation, their eardrums stabbed, and a massive explosion echoed. Bang! Zhou Hao felt as if his eardrums had exploded. Why else would he feel as if his brain was churning? A huge rock weighed down their chests, but the sight before them obliterated their feelings. The protective shield of the fairy mountain glowed with a rainbow of colors the moment it collided with the fireball. Fiery red flames seemed to ignite the white shield. Then, something incredible happened. The blazing flames dwindled rapidly, clinging to the surface of the shield like a trickle, gradually seeping into it until they vanished completely. The giant fireball had actually been completely absorbed by the shield? The shield absorbed the fireball? The defense was successful, Zhou Hao asked in disbelief. Such a ferocious fireball, like a sun barreling down, had been so effortlessly absorbed by the shield? No, look carefully, Tony Stark shouted. Everyone followed his finger. A faint, narrow crack appeared along the edge of the outermost layer of the white shield, and it seemed to be expanding. Snap, the long crack spread out into countless smaller cracks. A gentle breeze blew, and the first layer of shield shattered into pieces like broken glass. The first layer of shield is shattered. Zhou Hao glanced at the remaining 6 layers of shield, speechless for a moment. We have 6 layers of shields left, and 8 fireballs. The situation isn't optimistic, Dr. Banner said, sweat beading on his forehead. Never in his life had he felt more terrified than at that moment. Zhou Hao. It'll take time for the fireballs to penetrate the shields one by one. Think of some self-defense, Zheng Mingyang, who had been watching their precarious situation from the command center, took the opportunity to speak anxiously. Tony Stark nodded. Yes, I have a suggestion. He hadn't finished his words when the temperature suddenly rose sharply, as if they were immersed in magma. The astronauts looked up at the sky. Suddenly, the 8 giant fireballs merged into one, forming a giant dragon that could soar into the sky. Chapter 83, Brilliant Glory, Lord Erlang. Chapter 83, Brilliant Light, Lord Erlang, 2024-08-19 Author, Guigui Monster. Chapter 83, Brilliant Light, Lord Erlang. Chapter 82, Brilliant Light, Lord Erlang. The dragon was composed entirely of golden red flames, its back a dazzling golden glow. Its sharp claws treaded upon clouds of flame, roaring furiously as it launched a final attack on the immortal mountain's 6 remaining protective shields. Is that a dragon? Zhou Hao trembled as he looked up at the sky. The dragon roiled the heavens, as if the entire sky were ablaze. Golden light shone crimson, tinging the sky with its only hue. Oh no, Tony Stark felt his legs weaken. The dragon's intimidating presence and the intense heat made it difficult to breathe. In this tense moment, he no longer held out for survival. As if sensing danger, the shields of white light suddenly erupted in a dazzling rainbow of light. Amidst the soaring radiance, the sound of drums echoed, like a warrior's oath before battle. Look, the shield, Dr. Banner exclaimed in wonder, and everyone looked in the direction of his finger. The shield's light faded, revealing an ancient symbol in its center. The symbol shone with shimmering light, a gentle glow that brought a sense of comfort to everyone. Perhaps, the shield could withstand this. Dr. Banner had barely finished speaking when a dragon's roar was heard. Boom! The dragon charged at the shield with lightning speed, tearing through the sky with devastating force. The astronauts felt a powerful gust of air sweep over them, blowing them away like leaves. The shield's light pattern collided with a red mark on the dragon's forehead, and at the moment of contact, an intense burst of light erupted. The astronauts shielded their eyes. In an instant, the light faded, and they opened their eyes to see the outermost layer of the shield shattered. "It's broken." Zhou Hao stared at the shield in amazement. "It's not over yet. Look carefully," Tony Stark said. It was hard to make out in the glare, and just as Zhou Hao was trying to get a closer look, a roar like a cracking mountain and collapsing jade pierced everyone's eardrums. The astronauts watched helplessly as 2 more layers of the protective shield before them shattered. "It's over," only the last 3 layers of the precarious shield remained. The dragon raised its neck and roared to the heavens. In an instant, it was engulfed in flames and vanished. From the blazing inferno, countless golden red rays of light shot out, piercing the shield like 1,000 arrows. The white shield resembled a bullseye, pierced with golden red lightsabers. Countless tiny cracks, like water droplets, tore through the shield. The barrier shattered with a bang, shattering completely. The white light dimmed, and even the fairy mountain lost its former radiant glow. In an instant, the once radiant fairy mountain became a dead mountain. A deathly silence enveloped the entire mountain. The golden red light now lost all its power to resist it, a storm-like force gathering within it. The astronauts' faces were half shadowed by the immortal mountain, half stained with a deep crimson. The crimson gold light swept across the sky like a raging wave, like a dark cloud bearing down on the sky. The astronauts watched helplessly as the crimson gold light darkened, a heavy oppression gripping their hearts. "Is this all over?" Tony Stark stared at the sky, his face drained of color by fear. His eyes were filled with only the dark sky and that sinister, powerful crimson light. Boom! The red light transformed into a vast net, descending from the heavens, enveloping the immortal mountain. Smoke filled the air, and the mountain collapsed with a thunderous bang. The lunar surface was engulfed in thick smoke. The audience watching the live broadcast could hear no sound, only see a cloud of smoke on the screen. The same was true in the command center. "Zhou Hao, how are you guys? Can you hear me?" Zhang Mingyang asked anxiously, his heart clenching. His eyes were fixed on the screen, but he couldn't see a thing, let alone hear a sound. It was as if the entire lunar surface had fallen into dead silence. An intense sense of fear gripped him. Zhang Mingyang shouted. "Zhou Hao! Zhou Hao! This is Command Center. If you hear me, please answer." In the silence, just when Zhang Mingyang felt they were in danger, a soft cough was heard. "Ahem, Command Center, it's Zhou Hao. How are you guys?" "Don't worry, the 4 of us are fine. Nothing serious," Zhou Hao spoke, his voice slightly panting. The sudden change just now was like escaping death. Although they were fine, they were still a little overwhelmed. What the hell just happened? Zhang Mingyang was relieved to know they were fine, but his curiosity was also piqued. In those circumstances, the 4 of them had managed to escape and survive. It was truly a miracle. Could it be that there was a god protecting them? "We seem to have been." Zhou Hao was just saying this when there was a sudden, loud noise. A burst of white light burst forth, breaking through the thick smoke, and the image on the screen became visible. Atop the crumbling ruins of the immortal mountain, a tall figure stood proudly. Even in the backlight, the man's sturdy frame was visible, his red cloak fluttering in the wind. "Who comes here to disturb my quiet meditation?" a resounding voice echoed, as if pouring down from above them. The threat, delivered lightly, was incredibly penetrating, clearly heard by everyone. It seemed as if the voice came not from the person before them, but from the resonance of the heavens and earth in all directions. Tony Stark felt his scalp tingle. He sensed a powerful intimidation ahead, distinct from the crimson light. Like his companions, he dared not raise his head. A powerful, ancient force seemed to intimidate them, and they trembled. At this moment, the crimson light flared up again, only now it transformed into a ball of light, which the man before him was toying with. The crimson light that had previously possessed the power to devour heaven and earth was now being toyed with by this very man? Everyone was stunned by this sight. Tony Stark was nearly petrified. It was like his first visit to the Great Wall of China as a child. The shock was a tremor in his soul, a shattering upheaval of his entire worldview. The crimson light, which had left the 4 of them defenseless, was easily conquered by the man before him. Tony Stark knew clearly that this might be the difference between man and God. The white light enveloping the man gradually dissipated, revealing a man in silver armor with bound hair. His red cape fluttered with a chilling pressure, as if embracing the sky and the moon, while his shining silver armor seemed to gather the entire universe's light into itself. Could he be an ancient god? Dr. Banner stared blankly before him. This dazzling man seemed to have taken away the light in his eyes. Banner felt that he could no longer look away from him. If he did, he would lose all light. Chapter 84, The ruins of the prehistoric continent begin to appear. Chapter 84, The Great Desolate Continent, Ruins Emerge, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 84, The Great Desolate Continent, Ruins Emerge. Chapter 83, The Great Desolate Continent, Ruins Emerge. The man stood in midair with an unyielding aura. His features couldn't be described as handsome, but rather as the most perfect facial features imaginable. His eyes were stern, cold without a trace of warmth, but a slight frown neutralized his coldness, creating just the right amount of intimidation. Everything before them sent the people of Earth into a frenzy. Professor Lin Feng is incredible. What else doesn't he know? Is this the ancient god? If he's not a god, then who else could be? Sure enough, the moon is indeed a relic of our great desolate continent. China can finally trace its roots. The US top brass must be going crazy now. Ho ha ho ha! In the command center, everyone stared at the screen in amazement. Zheng Mingyang stepped back slightly, his heart pounding. He even felt he couldn't look directly at the man on the screen. He wished Professor Lin Feng were there right now. As the commander-in-chief, he didn't know what to do. This man had actually managed to escape unscathed from that attack. Furthermore, the red light that had seemed like the end of the world to them was like a docile cat before him. Who the hell was he? Zheng Mingyang's heart pounded wildly, and the corners of his mouth curled up uncontrollably. A surge of ecstasy surged within him. Whoever this man was, he must be an ancient deity of China. With such a powerful deity as an ancestor, anyone considering challenging China would think twice. The world's attention was now fixed on this man. A radiance shone around him, and just standing there filled everyone with awe. He grasped a three-pointed, two-edged sword, and it materialized. He gently swung it, and with a barely perceptible force, a deep chasm opened in the distance where the sword pointed. It was even deeper and wider than the previous red light's sudden fall. Just as everyone was stunned, the wrinkled skin between his brows opened slightly, as if pregnant, revealing an eye poised on his forehead. It was a pair of eyes capable of seeing everything in the world, eyes that seemed to be created by heaven and earth, so neutral and peaceful, yet so cold and majestic. Everyone was involuntarily drawn to that third eye. They saw themselves in it. Nothing could be hidden, nothing could be hidden. This scene undoubtedly had the greatest impact on the astronauts. They trembled uncontrollably before the third eye, memories flooding back like a tide, including some of their most secret secrets. Fortunately, the man began to move. He slowly stepped from the ruins, his demeanor calm, as if strolling in a garden. He raised his gaze to the sky, which was deep and vast in the distance, a stark contrast to the radiance of his presence. Everyone's attention was fixed on him, and Zheng Mingyang in the command center was in a state of panic. What is he looking at? He muttered silently, no one able to answer him. Besides the man's determined footsteps, he walked forward, the four astronauts' gazes following him closely. His silver armor grew increasingly dazzling, and golden light shone with his steps like a lotus blossoming beneath his feet. Streams of golden light flickered along the path he passed, forming a galaxy-like band of light in his wake. The astronauts held their breath, envious of the beautiful miracle, yet terrified of what he might do. He stood still, a frivolous frown between his brows, his eyes suddenly sharp. In an instant, he was enveloped in golden light, and with a leap, he was thousands of feet high in the sky. What is he going to do? His movements made the astronaut's breath catch. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised the three-pointed, double-edged sword in his hand and stabbed it towards the sky. The three-pointed, double-edged sword erupted with a fierce golden light. The radiance, carrying the blade's might, ripped a deep rift through the sky. Rumble, the earth shook, and even earth itself felt the trembling. A roar echoed, its intensity stinging the astronauts' eardrums. They instinctively covered their ears, their eyes still avidly watching the transformation unfold before them. The man stood alone, the entire sky a backdrop. The boundless sky was marked only by the fluttering figure of his red robe and the boundless radiance of his shining silver armor. He stood there, as if admiring the piercing heavens he had pierced. Suddenly, a rainbow of light burst forth from the black rift. He extended his palm, and the light shone into his grasp, instantly transforming into his own radiance. An unbearable light emanated from him. He turned, and the rift behind him continued to cleave, forming a chasm. Endless darkness and loneliness were left behind him. The moon, was pierced by him. Zhou Hao's trembling voice echoed through the liver stream, reaching everyone. Earth, syncing with the moon, fell into an uncanny silence. The camera zoomed in on the boundless chasm, and in that vast darkness, everyone saw their own stunned faces. Can someone pinch me through the internet? Am I dreaming? Even if it's a god, this is too much. Where's Professor Lin Feng? We need you. Explain. What's going on? Are all ancient gods so powerful? Faced with all this, everyone felt bewildered. Blinking their eyes, they understood for the first time the meaning of being a frog in a well. So there are worlds beyond the reach of imagination. Regardless, this day would go down in history. While most people were filled with excitement, the American leadership was feeling a complex mix of emotions. They monitored their citizens' online comments, only to discover, to their dismay, that the majority of Americans were already watching the Chinese live stream of the moon landing, gasping in amazement. Many also took the opportunity to criticize the Mi government, criticizing their inaction. But they had no rebuttal. A deep sense of dread hung over the heads of the U.S. top brass. China's resurgence seems unstoppable. What should we do? It's not too late to make peace with them. We still have information about that god from the ancient times. China should be willing to share it with us, right? The empty, lonely blackness of the live broadcast seemed to shift as the crowd shuddered. Slowly, the light returned to the darkness, from deep to light, then emitting a bright white glow. It seemed to be returning to its original state. Like the ebb and flow of the tide, the light and brightness gradually returned to normal. The live broadcast was exactly the same as it had been before the far side of the moon. What's going on? Even a mind as brilliant as Tony Stark couldn't withstand the continuous, mythical changes. Yet, I want to know too, Zhou Hao frantically said. He looked around in panic, and was suddenly stunned by the scene before him. The audience watching the live broadcast also saw it clearly. On the screen, the scene was crystal clear and unobstructed. Could this be the remains of the Great Desolation continent? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 85, Lunar Ruins, Attracting World Attention. Chapter 85, Lunar Ruins, Attracting Worldwide Attention. 2024-08-19 Author, Guigui Monster. Chapter 85, Lunar Ruins, Attracting Worldwide Attention. The audience watching the live stream watched the scene unfold, their faces filled with disbelief. The screen revealed a vast expanse of ruins stretching as far as the eye could see, with broken walls and rubble everywhere, and the fractured cross-sections of majestic stone pillars clearly visible. The crumbling ruins harmonized seamlessly with the moon's boundless loneliness. The deep blue night silently enveloped the ruins, as if they had undergone a profound transformation. Yet, even with the ravages of time, the majestic structures still spoke of their former glory. This is the ancient ruin that Professor Lin Feng spoke of, Zhang Mingyang declared in a resounding voice from the command center, suppressing his trembling voice with excitement, allowing his words to be heard throughout the world via the live stream. In truth, his words were a bit rash. But at this moment, no one could refute him. Everyone, stunned as he was, had reached the same conclusion. No one doubted what they saw. Everyone was absolutely convinced of both the ancient world and Lin Feng. Those watching the live stream still felt like they were dreaming. They had been eagerly anticipating the true nature of the ancient ruins, but when they finally saw it, they felt their preconception shattered. The scene before them was beyond anyone's imagination. It could even be said that no one had dared to dream of such a scene. Those magnificent ruins, those endless expanses that seemed to reach the horizon. Even eons of time hadn't diminished the splendor of their past glory. Begin surveying the ruins and prepare for exploration, Zhang Mingyang's voice rang out with determination. His chest heaved violently, but the gleam in his eyes was terrifying. He understood the significance of what was unfolding before his eyes for China. Not only would it extend Chinese history back thousands of years, but it would also offer the potential for a quantum leap in scientific research. His command at this moment ushered in a glorious future for China. Professor Lin Feng was the greatest hero of all. Command received, preparing for exploration. The view before the audience suddenly rose, their vision shifting as the astronauts worked in the air. Everyone was filled with curiosity and anticipation about what would unfold during the upcoming exploration. These ruins were more than just ruins. For China and the entire world, they were the most valuable treasures in the treasury of human civilization. It was foreseeable that they would generate thousands of research projects in the future. The Americans, however, were already panicking at this discovery. How is this possible? The ruins actually exist. Oh my God, what are we going to do? China is unstoppable. Furious roars and chest-beating echoed from the CIA offices. The current international situation was essentially one of American and Chinese dominance. The competition between the US and China had reached a fever pitch. Under these circumstances, the slight technological advantage that the US prided itself on was shattered by China's recent discovery. If China were to further its research, the day would soon come when the Americans would be left far behind. Just as the US brass was losing their temper, the office door opened again. Sir, here's the latest news. Our current manned space technology isn't mature enough. Even if the Apollo program were to be restarted, it would take time to implement new research programs. Upon hearing the report, the US brass erupted in fury. China completed the modification of a manned space launch vehicle in just a few days. And from scratch. And now you dare tell me we need more time. How much longer? By the time we land on the moon, China will have already dominated the universe. The CIA officer who had come to report paled, mumbling incoherently, Sir, you. China, don't mention China to me again, the US brass exclaimed, clearly on the verge of collapse. The CIA employee mentally prayed a final prayer, then, with a fearless heart, said, it's extremely difficult to mobilize factories nationwide. The technology labs also require significant investment, and the finance department is also under pressure. These words were like a bucket of cold water, calming the furious American executive. As they calmed down, their expressions grew increasingly grim. They thought, it's not just that factories are difficult to mobilize, it's simply impossible. Furthermore, he thought, as he ran through the dire national conditions, agonizingly comparing them to China's current situation. Facing the United States' complete decline was China's comprehensive rise. Even without this, China's transcendence was inevitable. The American executives couldn't help but wonder, could national destiny really exist? Could China's destiny truly be, as the Chinese say, God bless China? SHIELD was also completely despairing. A dejected atmosphere spread throughout the agency. Director Pierce slumped in his chair, even more disheartened than the American CIA executives. He had already confirmed the two unidentified astronauts who landed on the moon, Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. Tony Stark represented the most advanced technology in the United States. It could be said that Tony Stark was the technological ceiling of the United States. Yet, this ceiling was not only participating in China's manned mission, but also providing crucial assistance. Tony Stark's appearance on the list of 4 astronauts was clear. Even though China has always been committed to recruiting talent, the fact that astronauts for such a crucial manned lunar landing included American descent clearly demonstrated the magnitude of Tony Stark's assistance to China. Pierce even wondered if Tony Stark had sold himself out to China. This was undoubtedly a devastating blow to the United States. Lin Feng, is it because of that Lin Feng? A hint of murderous intent flashed in Pierce's eyes. If he couldn't stop China, then killing a single person was probably the only option. All of this fell into Nick Fury's sight. Knowing Pierce well, he understood his thoughts almost immediately without even needing to react. A sense of panic spread through Nick Fury's heart. This wasn't a fear of a powerful external force, but rather an unease about losing control internally. Those at the highest levels of this nation were already on the brink of madness. Tony. Nick Fury thought to himself. Perhaps Tony Stark had been right again. Nick Fury's clear thoughts at this moment made his heartbeat even more intense. A red figure resonated in his mind, a figure so radiant. When that figure leaped and split the sky, the very sky and the earth changed color. How could that scene not make one's blood boil? Chapter 86, This is how the moon was born. Chapter 86 The moon was born like this, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster Chapter 86 The moon was born like this. At this moment, Nick Fury looked at the screen again. He looked at the broken walls, the magnificent buildings and the collapsed stone walls. He suddenly realized that everything that had just happened. Did it seem real? It was all an illusion. All of this made his whole body stiffen, and he couldn't help but blurt out, "Oh my God." At this moment, more and more people slowly came back to their senses from the huge shock just now. But before their eyes, They kept seeing the red light that was wrapped in the power of destruction, like a tidal wave, the brilliant golden light that could cleanse people's souls, and the majestic figure that could shine with the same light as the sky and the earth. All of this turned out to be an illusion. After a brief silence, the whole world clamored for this grand illusion. Huaxia. Is this the true history of China? Having such a powerful deity as an ancestor, I'm truly envious. Our gods can only drink. How could Professor Lin Feng know all this? He's not some prophet. Meanwhile, in the history department of Wukong University, Professor Feng Min watched, equally shocked by the scene before him. Years of immersion in history had honed his composure, yet no one could remain calm in such a situation. He muttered to himself, "Professor Lin, who the hell are you?" Feng Min was even more astonished by the grand spectacle on the moon, but the deeper he pondered, the more he realized the significance of Lin Feng's role in it. Lin Feng knew of the ancient deity's existence, the ruins of the prehistoric continent, and he even predicted the inevitable encounters humans would face after landing on the moon. If Professor Feng Min had been deeply shocked by the sight of that figure, then the shock Lin Feng brought to him now was no less than that. Professor Lin Feng, who is he? President Zhao Songgang, who had invited Lin Feng to Wukong University along with Feng Min, also realized this. But at this moment, his heart was filled with excitement and jubilation. God bless China. At such a critical moment, a master has emerged, versed in ancient history and mastering modern technology. Such unprecedented talent, unparalleled only by providence. As the astronauts diligently explored, the audience seemed to be entering a break. Everyone was busy scrolling through their phones, enthusiastically discussing everything they had just witnessed. Weibo's 50 trending searches, usually filled with a variety of content, including paid entries, were now completely occupied by the lunar landing, and even then, they were still insufficient. The red explosion characters next to dozens of entries were striking, like a dazzling display of lights and decorations, proving that today was a historic day. Many foreigners also took to Weibo to enthusiastically discuss with the Chinese. The homepage was flooded with messages in different languages, offering congratulations to China. The most discussed topic, firmly topping Weibo's trending search list, consisted of just 2 words, Lin Feng. The rest were dominated by terms like China's successful moon landing, ancient primordial, and goddess descends. Each of these topics attracted hundreds of millions of people, but no matter the topic, it always came back to the question of Lin Feng's identity. Lin Feng was a household name. People were stunned by the unimaginable events unfolding on the moon, and the prospect of future changes following the discovery of the primordial continent filled them with excitement. All of this deepened their admiration for Professor Lin Feng. Who was Professor Lin Feng? How did he know about the ancient events? What else did he know? These questions lingered in everyone's minds, yet no one had the answers. Meanwhile, on the far side of the moon, astronauts were diligently exploring the situation. Though they weren't participating in the heated discussions on Earth, everything they saw before them, the relics on the lunar surface, these sacred, age-old stones and tiles, made them feel even more profoundly fortunate. After all, not everyone has the opportunity to visit the lunar surface and experience these ancient relics up close. The composition has been analyzed. These compositions I've never seen before. It's absolutely unique to Earth. No wonder it's managed to remain remarkably intact despite the erosion of cosmic rays. Are we about to usher in another technological explosion? The 4 astronauts couldn't contain their excitement, their hearts racing as they struggled to handle the magnitude of this discovery. This was a monumental discovery in human history. With these discoveries, another technological explosion is just around the corner. And that goes for Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. As scientists, they understood the significance and invaluable value of such a discovery. In other words, this lunar discovery made the impossible possible. It was a technological breakthrough from scratch. The restoration drawings for the building are almost complete. Dr. Banner's enthusiasm grew. As he spoke, everyone looked at the virtual portrait before him. The progress bar below loaded, and everyone's eyes followed it. 80%, 90%, a virtual restoration image popped up before their eyes. Everyone's breath caught. Oh my god, how come it's exactly like the fairy mountain we just saw? What does this mean? Joe Howe was startled, but he couldn't react for a moment. Tony Stark was equally shocked. He took a deep breath to calm himself and explained. This proves that the ruins beneath our feet are indeed the temple on that fairy mountain. His words were clearly heard by the audience watching the live broadcast. They were once again stunned. Many were still confused and unable to react. Some had gradually understood and were excitedly discussing it. Oh my god. If I understand correctly, if the ruins are the Mirage Temple we just saw, then the moon exists because of that deity's battle. Oh my god. If someone had told me before today that the moon's creation stemmed from a battle, I wouldn't have believed it. But after today, I think everything is possible. Sure enough, everything is just as Professor Lin Feng said. The moon and earth are both fragments of the ancient primordial continent. Are we entering the mythological era? The more the people on earth discussed this, the more a sense of loss grew within them. It was a realization of their own insignificance in the vastness of the universe. The ancient primordial world was like a mirror, reflecting both the present world and illuminating each individual's inner self. For the first time, the people of Earth felt the shock of the primordial continent, but at the same time, they became more composed and more open-minded. After all, after such an incredible sight, no one could remain the same. Meanwhile, the astronauts' reconnaissance deepened, slowly approaching the core area. 232. Chapter 231 The Game Between the Two Sides. 232. Chapter 231 The Game of Two Sides 2024, 1111 Author, Good Boy Monster Chapter 231 The Game of Two Sides During Zhao Heilan's time in the Avengers, she and Hashimoto Kanai formed a deep friendship. Hashimoto Kanai was naturally beautiful, but her personality was relatively weak. As a result, she was often bullied as a child, which led to her low self-esteem. She rarely took the initiative to make friends, and she had few close friends. Zhao Heilan, on the other hand, was both talented and beautiful. From a young age, she was envied by the girls around her. The boys, also envious and intimidated by her excellence, kept her distant and isolated. She disdained to please others, so she often kept to herself, developing a fiercely independent and self-reliant character. Perhaps because they both had a common trait of being withdrawn from childhood, these two rare Asian women in the Avengers quickly became close friends. Zhao Heilan didn't resent Hashimoto Kanai calling her Dr. Zhao. After all, she was still a Sakurai girl, and she was very careful about her appearance. Being in a public place, with Sakurai government military personnel watching, Hashimoto Kanai couldn't act too casual. However, the genuine joy she felt at seeing herself was unfazed. That was enough. Hashimoto Kanai led Zhao Heilan to her home. It was a typical Japanese-style house. The two women simultaneously removed their shoes and walked one after the other across the wooden floor. Finally, they sat facing each other on the tatami, leaning over a small wooden table, and began to talk. After reminiscing for a while, Zhao Heilan observed Hashimoto Kanai closely. She noticed that Hashimoto Kanai not only had a more confident and calm demeanor, but also an indescribable aura. Zhao Heilan couldn't define what this aura was, but she simply felt that Hashimoto Kanai was particularly beautiful today, possessing a uniquely feminine charm, a quality she both admired and repelled. Unbeknownst to her, Hashimoto Kanai's indescribable aura was a uniquely feminine charm and allure, a quality that only blossomed after experiencing love. Hashimoto Huanai was pouring tea for Zhao Heilan. Seeing Zhao Heilan looking at her, she asked curiously, "Sister Helen, why are you looking at me?" Zhao Heilan smiled slightly when she heard Hashimoto Huanai's question, "To see how you have been recently." Then, without waiting for Hashimoto Huanai to answer, she tilted her head and supported her cheek with one hand. "Huanai, I want to work in the Avengers." Hashimoto Huanai handed the poured tea to Zhao Heilan. Hearing this, she said happily, "Okay, Sister Helen. The Avengers welcomes you at any time. You can come to do experiments whenever you want." Zhao Heilan shook her head and looked at Hashimoto Huanai. "No, Huanai. I'm not talking about being assigned to the experiment. What I mean is that I want to be stationed in the Avengers. I will stay in the Avengers in the future." Hashimoto Huanai was not obviously happy when she heard this. Instead, she looked at Zhao Heilan's slightly decadent expression and asked worriedly, "Sister Helen, what's wrong with you?" Zhao Heilan picked up the tea and drank it directly without tasting it carefully. After drinking it in one gulp, she said succinctly, "Our studio's funding chain has been cut off. The investor can provide us with funds, but the condition is that I spend a night with their boss." Her calm tone and expression seemed to be telling someone else's story, but the veins bulging in her hand, tightly gripping the teacup, betrayed her anger and unwillingness. Hashimoto Kanai understood when she heard this. With Zhao Heilan's personality, it was unlikely that she would compromise. But without financial support, her biological experiments could not continue. So she thought of the Avengers. The chaebols in South Korea have enormous power. Zhao Heilin's research laboratory was nominally supported by the state, but in reality it was just a pawn in the hands of the chaebols. The funding for Zhao Heilin's studio was cut off at any time, which shows the power of the chaebols. After understanding Zhao Heilin's predicament, Hashimoto Kanzuki thought for a moment and said to her, "Sister Helen, how about this? At tomorrow's research conference, I'll explain that the appearance of a god might lead to a breakthrough in biomimicry technology, and then I'll hire you under the guise of the Avengers. What do you think?" Zhao Heilin thought about it and felt that Hashimoto Kanzuki's suggestion was very pertinent. Furthermore, considering the Jebel's reluctance to release her, her reasoning was quite reasonable. She nodded readily, agreeing to Hashimoto Kanzuki's suggestion. After Stark left a message for Pepper Potts, he once again embarked on his own investigation. Although he had already discovered that the Mandarin shown on TV was a fake and offered no real insight into the situation, the real mastermind was still lurking in the shadows, and could reappear under the guise of the Mandarin at any time, stirring up trouble. Pepper Potts, thousands of miles away, finally received Stark's message, feeling relieved. Despite Professor Lin Feng's assurance and Natasha's confirmation, she had been unable to obtain definitive information about Stark. Stark hadn't contacted her. She worried that Natasha and the others wouldn't tell her the truth, yet she was also afraid she was just worrying too much. When Stark's message finally arrived, she was overcome with emotion and burst into tears. After calming down, Pepper began to suspect Maya. As Stark's ex-girlfriend, her appearance was too coincidental. Her arrival coincided with the terrorist attacks. Previously, Pepper was too distraught to consider this, worried about Stark. But now, calmer, she immediately noticed the suspicion. After finishing her business, she drove with Maya to a mysterious location. After the attacks, Natasha went to investigate the US president, while Maya stayed with Pepper. In the car, Pepper couldn't help but ask Maya, "Why did you come to our house that day?" Maya turned and looked at Pepper with a puzzled look, confused by her question. Pepper caught Maya's eye and decided to get to the point. "What was it that made you so desperate to see Stark that day? Why did you have to meet with him?" Maya knew Pepper had noticed something was amiss, so she confessed, "I think my boss works for Mandarin." Pepper's face flickered with surprise and fear. Maya looked around and said cautiously, "If we want to continue this conversation, we'd better find a private, safe place." Pepper struggled to process the shock of this news. She knew Mandarin, the madman who reveled in carrying out terrorist attacks. And Stark had just recently issued a challenge to Mandarin. Stark's attack wasn't accidental, it was premeditated. Mandarin had been targeting Stark for a long time. Trying to gather her thoughts, she asked, "Your boss works for Mandarin? How could that be? Didn't Tony say you were a botanist?" The implication was that a government employee couldn't possibly work for a private company. Maya explained, "That's true, but to be more precise, I'm a bioengineering genetics engineer, leading a 40-person research team. This team, however, is affiliated with a privately funded think tank." Pepper's face paled slightly at this. She felt that some of her suspicions might be grounded. She should have sensed the strange and intense hostility the man she had met in the reception room that day had toward Stark. However, she still didn't want to assume anything, so she tentatively asked, "So, what's your boss's name?" She silently prayed it wasn't that man. However, Maya's answer ruthlessly shattered her illusions. "My boss's name is Aldrich Lucaso." Pepper suppressed her shock and drove silently for a long time. Maya, perplexed by Pepper's unusual composure, observed her. After a while, Pepper pulled up to a hotel. When Stark was courting her, they'd occasionally met there. It was a secret hideout, unknown to the public. She'd brought Maya here for safety reasons. After they entered the room, Maya, with a pained expression, didn't jump right in with her story. Instead, she mentioned a precedent, Wiener von Braun, a young idealist. Before he built rockets for the Nazis, he dreamed of traveling in space. A sneer crossed her face, whether mocking herself or Braun's decision to entrust the wrong person. Then the first V2 attacked London. Do you know what he said? He said the rocket had operated flawlessly, but it had landed on the wrong planet. At this point, Pepper had essentially grasped Maya's hint. Maya continued to recount her own experience. "We began our research innocently, as if it were pure science. Then we became obsessed with it and became blindly arrogant." The sneer on her face faded, replaced by a pitiful pain. "But by the time we realized it, We'd already gone too far down the wrong path. Pepper began to comfort her. Maya, don't be so hard on yourself. You had no idea your research would be used for this purpose. It's your boss who's tarnishing your hard work. Maya's expression grew hesitant, but they were used for military purposes. Pepper used her own company as an example. Stark Clean Energy used to be a military-industrial company. Maya, you really don't have to be so hard on yourself. It's not the weapons that are wrong, it's the people who use them wrongly. Maya looked at Pepper with a complicated expression. Thank you, Pepper. I really appreciate it. Just then, someone suddenly burst through the door, startling the two people in their conversation. Pepper looked back, her face suddenly changing. The face she least wanted to see at that moment, Lucaso, appeared before her. She didn't know what had gone wrong, leading to the leak of her address. But she knew Lucaso's presence wasn't a good omen. Pepper, we're seeing each other again, Lucaso said with a smile. I told you we'd see each other again, he said, knocking Pepper unconscious with a punch. After knocking her out, a flash of pain crossed Lucaso's face, but it was quickly replaced by a frenzy. He looked at Maya, who lay peacefully in bed, his expression relaxed, but his hands exerted a subtle pressure. I have to thank you for installing a GPS tracker on her car, which allowed me to find this place so quickly. He shifted the topic from a light-hearted tone to a murderous tone, but I have a question for you. I'd appreciate you explaining it to me, without making me struggle to figure it out, okay? Maya folded her arms and stared at him silently, a hint of anger on her face, but Lucaso ignored it. She didn't directly answer his question. Since Maya wouldn't initiate the conversation, Luxkis decided to confront him directly. He rubbed his fingers together with a casual air, looking down, as if enjoying the simple pleasure. But his question betrayed his inner anxiety. Want to tell me why you went to Stark's house that day? He appeared to still trust Maya, but his volatile expression betrayed his feelings towards her. Maya, observing Lucaso's expression, finally stood up and angrily accused, I was going there to solve the problem. I didn't know you and the boss wanted to blow it up. What's wrong? I've worked for you for so long, and I don't even have this little freedom. Lucaso evaded the question, pondering the implications of Maya's words. He quickly grasped Stark's overbearing personality, which had led him to speak so brazenly before the media, vowing to fight Mandarin to the bitter end. Maya, having guessed Mandarin's identity and knowing his vindictiveness and efficient methods, her visit was more of a warning than a solution. He pretended to be suddenly enlightened. Ah, I see. You want to save Stark, right? His tone rose lightly at first, then became intensely oppressive. Even though you know his existence poses a grave threat to our organization, Maya was speechless. Lucaso had revealed her intentions, and there was no need to hide them. She evaded the main point and tried to persuade him. I told you, Lucaso, Stark is a talent. We can use him. Lucaso looked at Maya with interest, his expression amused, the corners of his mouth curling up slightly. He nodded gently, gesturing for Maya to continue until she gave him a satisfactory answer. This woman not only wanted to sabotage his plans, but also dared to talk back. If she couldn't give a satisfactory answer, her fate would be unpredictable. Maya gave her reasons directly. We lack relevant talents, and Stark is just such a talent. Next year we will launch new products of the ultimate biotransformation plan. To complete it within the expected time, we need more professional talents. Stark is such a talent, isn't he? Lucaso snorted. Why don't I go to Bruce Senna or South Korea's Zhao Helen? These two people must be better than Stark at biological research. Maya was stunned, then realized Lucaso's test, and couldn't help but retorted. Chapter 88 The Mysterious Bottom of the Hole. Chapter 88, The Mysterious Bottom of the Hollow, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster Chapter 88, The Mysterious Bottom of the Hollow. This sudden interlude sparked a flurry of discussion. The long period of darkness had left them feeling slightly fatigued and uneasy, but now, they were all abuzz, feeling a surge of security. Although the environment was uncertain, at least their astronauts were well prepared. I know the source of your earlier feeling of pressure, most likely due to changes in gravity. Tony Stark analyzed the data from the spacecraft. His calm and focused voice was remarkably convincing. He continued, we're getting closer and closer to some radiation source. While we don't know what it is yet, there must be something beneath us, something emitting radiation. Could it be some ancient energy body? Dr. Banner concluded, responding to Tony Stark's analysis. His voice was a little excited, his curiosity about the unknown outweighing his fear, and he even wanted to quicken his pace downward. At this moment, Zhou Hao, who had been clearing the way below them, suddenly stopped. "What's wrong? What happened?" the astronauts kept asking, and the audience watching the live stream couldn't help but feel their hearts clench. Zhou Hao's response went unheard in the darkness. A blinding ray of light shattered the gloom surrounding the astronauts, illuminating the audience's vision as well. "Look ahead," Zhou Hao said. As he spoke, he manipulated the lights, evenly illuminating the stone walls on all four sides of the hollow. Now everyone had a clear view of the scene on the stone wall. It was a mural. Zheng Mingyan clenched his hands on the podium, staring at the mural. It wasn't very clear on the screen. The wall was vast, the lighting was dim, and the broadcast was behind a camera. Even under these conditions, the mural's magnificent colors, the exquisite brushwork, and the figure at the center, shimmering even more brilliantly in the light, stirred the hearts of those who first saw it. This was beauty. This was culture. This was the legacy of a brilliant civilization. "This is the most powerful proof of the ancient Chinese civilization," his voice echoed to the audiences around the world watching the live broadcast. No one uttered a word of objection. Everyone stared in amazement at the mural before them, not daring to blink. Meanwhile, the astronauts on the moon were still conducting their survey. Reporting to Command Center, "We are slowly descending. A rising temperature has been detected. We are now 3,000 meters underground." Reports came one after another. Undeterred by the discovery of the mural, the astronauts continued their descent with focused concentration. As the astronauts descended, the audience on the other side of the screen could see more and more of the mural. As they saw more of it, they gradually realized that the murals were not separate scenes, but rather a continuous series. This vast and continuous mural seemed to tell the epic story of one man's heroics. The splitting of seas and mountains, the emergence of golden light, battles on the battlefield, the sun and moon shining together. People's eyes were glued to the murals, like reading a comic book. As the astronauts descended, the scene unfolded like a scroll. The already vibrant mural seemed to come alive. The deity, surrounded by thousands, seemed to step out from the stone wall, extending his arms to them. People felt as if they had been transported back to that era, a magnificent time when gods arose. They could almost hear the sounds of creation and the roaring cheers of the masses. For a moment, everyone watching intently was overcome with excitement, reality and fantasy blending together. Suddenly, the shimmering scene before their eyes turned pitch black. A profound darkness surged in like a tide, and in this thick blackness, everyone felt oppressed and suffocated. "What's going on?" Many people were momentarily stunned. A closer look revealed that the camera had been reversed, now facing upwards. Unknowingly, the astronauts had reached deep underground. If it weren't for the machine measuring them, they would have had no idea where they were. The boundless darkness seemed to have become a substance, like the waters of the deep ocean, enveloping the astronauts within. The terror of losing even their own existence was beyond words. Even though they knew their companions were still around, the thick darkness seemed to isolate them from everything else. Not only the astronauts, but even the viewers in front of the screens, felt a chill run down their spines. A chill spread from the soles of their feet up their bodies, and boundless fear gripped everyone's heart. Yet, amidst the darkness, the murals still shone brightly, their glow like a ray of light in the dark night, bringing courage and hope. This hope was not only a ray of light in the darkness, but also the spark of civilization. But what divine power created these murals? What glorious civilization lay behind them? These questions demanded further exploration. Just then, a trembling voice awoke everyone from their shock. "The probe has reached the bottom. The total depth of the cavity is 8,844 meters. The voice quickly reached the ears of everyone watching the live broadcast. "What? 8,844 meters? At such a depth, such beautiful murals could be left on the rock walls. Is this even humanly possible? And what's more, they were people from ancient times. The level of civilization in ancient times truly exceeds our imaginations. Wait a minute, 8,844 meters, that number, that's the height of Mount Everest. Could this be a coincidence?" As everyone was murmuring in shock, the astronauts' voices rang out again. Tony Stark's composure was gone, and now his voice sounded distinctly nervous. "We're detecting a continued rise in temperature. We're getting closer to the bottom. The terrain is getting narrower as we get closer, so everyone, gather towards the center." "Okay," Zhou Hao and the others said, noticeably slowing down and slowly moving closer. Everyone's hearts were gripped by their fears. The entire planet was on edge, and no one dared to speak aloud. Begin descend. With Tony Stark's words, the astronauts collectively accelerated downward. The live footage was moving at a rapid speed, making many people feel dizzy. After closing their eyes for a moment, they opened them again to find the astronauts frozen in midair. The combined searchlights illuminated the bottom of the cave, revealing the scene below. The moment the astronauts saw the scene below, they dared not approach. They froze, their eyes the only thing they dared to move. The audience watching the live stream were also stunned, already engaged in a heated discussion. How could the bottom of the cave be like this? Can anyone tell me, is this still the moon? At the bottom of the deep cave, a massive golden throne shone brilliantly against the murals. 233. Chapter 232, The Furious Luxor. 233. Chapter 232 The Furious Lucaso 2024-11-12 Author, Good Monster Chapter 232 The Furious Lucaso Then you can try it, and you will find out how stupid your idea is. Can you invite Bruce Senna? Will he willingly participate in his research? You can only try to coerce Zhao Helen. However, if the rumors are correct, based on her personality, you will see her dead body on the first day you tie her to the base. Lucaso raised his hands high. Okay, I can't argue with you, Maya. You think I'm joking? Maya looked indifferent, and replied coldly, but Lucaso, I don't find this joke funny at all. There was no embarrassment on Lucaso's face because of Maya's indifference. He put his hands in his pockets, staring at the floor, pacing back and forth, his voice confident, calm, and proud. So, how do you think we can get Stark to join us willingly? Willingness was essential, otherwise, they might just end up with a shoddy Stark. Even more so, if Stark tampered with a few decimal points during the research and development process, their new product, to be released next year, could become a pile of junk. This was also why he hadn't considered Senna and Zhao Helen. Senna's Hulk was a ticking time bomb, and Zhao Helen was an orphan, her parents orphaned at a young age. With no family, he had nothing to threaten her with. Maya listened to Lucaso's question, not realizing his insincerity, and assumed he was seriously considering it. She tried her best to persuade him, he just lacked the motivation to work with us before, but now he has it, doesn't he? Lucaso looked up, sizing Maya up, then back at Pepper, who had collapsed on the ground. He knew this was the motivation Maya had described for Stark's service, but he wondered if it was a woman's jealousy or something else entirely. Luxor looked back at Maya, sneered, and left the room. Following his steps, he left behind a command, take her away. You know where to take her. The two girls, dressed in kimonos, white socks, and wooden clogs, strolled across the snow. Tokyo, the land of cherry blossoms, wasn't particularly cold after the first snowfall, thanks to the pleasant climate of this low-lying island nation. They had a rare chance to relax and have fun. Seeing it was still early, Hashimoto Kanzuki suggested taking Zhao Helen on a tour of Tokyo. Zhao Helen, struggling with funding issues for her lab, decided to relax by meeting Hashimoto Kanzuki in Tokyo. She put on the kimono Hashimoto Kanzuki had carefully prepared for her and followed her around. They arrived at a small temple, seemingly devoid of visitors. Zhao Helen knew that the Sakura country government had secretly deployed troops to protect Hashimoto Kanzuki, so she had chosen less visited spots to avoid restricting access to too many people. Along the way, she saw numerous posters promoting Hashimoto Kanzuki on the streets, which spoke volumes about her fame in the Sakura country. However, even so, not many people had been able to approach Hashimoto Kanzuki during their journey, which spoke volumes about the Sakura country government's stance. Hashimoto Kanzuki gazed at the temple and said with satisfaction, Sister Helen, this is it, Gotokuji Temple. Here, people make wishes to the Maneki cats, and those whose wishes are fulfilled return to fulfill their wishes and bring new cats. Over time, the number of Maneki cats here will increase. Zhao Helen, looking at the large and small Maneki cats before her, felt a surge of excitement. Whether a wish comes true or not, it's a beautiful spiritual sustenance. Hashimoto Kanayu turned and smiled at Zhao Helen. Sister Helen, make a wish too. Perhaps the gods will hear you and grant it. With divine power now at her disposal, it would be easy for her to quietly grant Zhao Helen's wish. Zhao Helen thought for a moment, then closed her eyes, clasped her hands together, and made a sincere wish before the Torii gate. Hashimoto Kanayu's smile froze, and she looked at her in disbelief. As the sky darkened, The two of them, after having a good time, returned to Hashimoto Kanayu's residence. Zhao Hailin keenly noticed that since she made that wish, Hashimoto Kanayu had been somewhat absent-minded, feigning a relaxed air. However, she had no idea why. On the nearby street, a sudden noise erupted from a television playing commercials, and the two of them looked up simultaneously. The logo of an extremist organization appeared on the screen, followed by the repulsive image of Mandarin, his face etched with a solemnity that was completely out of character. There was no doubt that Mandarin had hijacked global television signals. His whereabouts were unknown, yet he was able to intercept television signals from the distant island nation of Sakura. The two girls exchanged glances, realizing the gravity of the situation, and simultaneously glanced at the large screen. Hashimoto Kanzuki perceived that satellites around the globe had been hijacked to varying degrees. The screen began with a series of flashes of violence. After a dazzling flash of light, Mandarin's voice reached him, both distant and close, chilling. His tone was brisk, his face etched with contentment. Mr. President, I told you I have 2 more lessons to teach you. Are you ready? This globally broadcast image was undoubtedly damaging to the dignity of the U.S. President and the U.S. government. This provocation was deeply infuriating. I hope to finish the remaining 2 classes before the Christmas celebrations are over. I think you're okay with that, Mandarin muttered to himself on the screen, seemingly selectively seeking the U.S. President's opinion. The camera zoomed out, revealing a full-length image of Mandarin. He sat upright in a large leather chair, a middle-aged, portly employee, bound and restrained, his feet resting on him. The man trembled, his eyes wide, and occasionally twitched, appearing terrified. However, with a gun pointed at his head, he struggled to suppress his fear. Mandarin spoke slowly. This gentleman, Thomas Richard, has a good name, and he's a very good person. He's an accountant for Cox Oil Company, and he works diligently. I'm also certain he's a good man. He nodded repeatedly, indicating his approval. However, the curled corners of his mouth betrayed indifference. As expected, the next moment he declared, I'm going to blow his head off. In 30 seconds, I'll shoot him in front of the whole world. Watch the live broadcast. He pointed to a nearby phone and said, Mr. President, you have this number in your phone. American, right? Within 30 seconds, if your president calls and I answer the phone, I'll spare his life. Looking at Thomas, who trembled at his feet, Mandarin kindly inquired, how's it going? Pretty inspiring, isn't it? Watch it carefully. The phone visibly rang. Hashimoto Kanayu and Zhao Hailin, who had been watching with trepidation, breathed a sigh of relief. However, Mandarin didn't answer the phone. He shot Thomas in the head, blood splattering all over the screen. Many parents watching quickly covered their children's eyes. Hashimoto Kanayu and Zhao Hailin were also stunned. They hadn't expected the terrorists to be so untrustworthy. Perhaps this was the lesson Mandarin wanted to teach the U.S. president. Never hope the terrorists will honestly abide by their agreements. At Lin Feng's hotel, several people were seeing Rod off. The U.S. president had just contacted him remotely. Lin Feng looked at Rod. Rod, be careful on your journey. Rod, understanding Lin Feng's subtext, gave a wry smile but remained silent. The U.S. president had just called him, firmly assuring Rod that he hoped the perpetrator would be found and brought to justice, perhaps even executed without further notice. As night fell, Zhao Hailin and Hashimoto Kanayu returned to Hashimoto Kanayu's room, heavy-hearted. A heavy atmosphere hung in the air. They sat opposite each other, speechless, finally falling asleep, their hearts heavy with worry. Surprisingly, Zhao Hailin still slept naked, drawing a glance of envy from Hashimoto Kanayu, who gazed at her graceful figure. After confirming Zhao Hailin was sound asleep, Hashimoto Kanayu quietly appeared in Lin Feng's room. She stared at Lin Feng for a long moment before slowly revealing Zhao Hailin's story. Just as she was about to leave, Lin Feng suddenly called out to her. Hashimoto Kanayu had come not simply to convey Zhao Hailin's wish to join the Avengers, but also to silently express her dissatisfaction with Lin Feng. He possessed divine power and the ability to prevent the tragedy, yet he chose to stand by and watch. Lin Feng offered no lecture, simply replaying the video of Vienna and handing it to Hashimoto Kanayu. Hashimoto Kanayu instantly understood his point. Lin Feng had always upheld the principle of non-interference in human activities. Even his joke about having the United States conquer Sakura, and then having China liberated and make it a province of China, was merely a joke. He had never put it into action. Hashimoto Kanayu could not understand Lin Feng's heartless nature. Tears welled in her eyes as she left in disappointment. However, even more disappointing was the behavior of humanity itself. The next day, due to Mandarin's global signal hijacking, the research institute temporarily disbanded for security reasons, with a reopening date still under discussion. Many scientists boarded chartered planes and returned home, intending to settle down and live peacefully. The Mandarin's pervasive presence made everyone feel a real threat. Compared to the distant prospect of an alien invasion and the protection of the gods, human civil unrest was a far greater threat to their lives. The last terrorist attack to garner such widespread attention was far larger than the 9/11 attacks. Hashimoto Kanzuki closely monitored the developments in public opinion. However, she discovered that the media, which should have condemned the terrorists, was being manipulated by those with ulterior motives to point the finger at the gods. Behind all this, she discovered, was the U.S. government's hidden manipulation. While some defended the gods, claiming they would not interfere in human affairs, Hashimoto was deeply distressed by the U.S. politicians' ability to call a spade and distort the truth. These very people who should have sympathized with the victims were actually using human blood to deal with their imaginary enemy, even though this imaginary enemy had never cared about them. She had naively believed that this misunderstanding was caused by the Kree rogue impersonating the U.S. president, but when she saw the angry American politicians on television, she was completely disappointed. She knew that deep down, they believed everything was someone else's fault. Now, she seemed to understand Lin Feng's approach. That night, Stark contacted the mother of a victim of a previous bombing and asked her about the incident. He then keenly sensed the presence of a mysterious organization. Sensing something was amiss, Luke Sasso dispatched 2 assassins to intercept and hunt Stark. However, with the cooperation of Stark and Harry, Stark escaped, while Luke Sasso's 2 assassins were killed and injured. But this didn't matter, as Pepper was still in Luke Sasso's hands, and Stark would fall into his trap regardless. After Richard's murder, Rogue, acting in the name of the president, recalled Rod and his Iron Patriot. All of this was observed by Luxor, who was closely monitoring the movements of Rhodes and Stark. He sipped his whiskey with intoxicated abandon, boasting, "Almost tomorrow, I'll have the world's most formidable terrorist and the world's greatest arms dealer in my hands. A politician and a terrorist leader combined, haha, just imagine it." After Thomas Richards was shot, all U.S. government and police departments went all out to find the ruthless Mandarin. They wholeheartedly investigated all suspicious signals. Finally, they found a clue. Rhodes, while on a reconnaissance flight, received a signal from the government. "Colonel Rhodes, relevant signals detected in Syria. Please proceed to investigate." Rhodes felt a little displeased. After all, he hadn't even met the president before being assigned this mission, but he suppressed his displeasure in order to capture Mandarin. A soldier's duty is to obey orders, so he couldn't say anything. Rhodes piloted his mech toward the target area. Upon arriving at his destination, he quickly dispatched the guards outside, only to encounter a group of imprisoned Middle Eastern women. Feeling awkward, Rhodes let them go. However, his guard dropped, leading to a surprise attack. Meanwhile, Stark hacked into a satellite, investigating company information he had uncovered from the deceased's mother's records. He saw footage of Luke Sasso conducting experiments, showing limbs regrowing and scars repairing, while others were reduced to ash. Stark remained silent, absorbed in the process. He knew there must be a connection between Luke Sasso and the Mandarins. That morning, Stark planned a raid on Luke Sasso's secret base. Chapter 89, The Hollow Land, The Sword Formation. Chapter 89, Hollow Land, Sword Formation, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 89, Hollow Land, Sword Formation. The throne gleamed dazzlingly under the searchlights, and the murals beside it seemed to extend upward from the throne. An incredible light enveloped the astronauts and illuminated the audience through the screens. "Look! There seems to be someone sitting on the throne." Many people now clearly saw that there seemed to be someone sitting on the throne. However, due to the backlight, the person on the throne was not clearly visible. "Don't disturb him. Let's descend slowly and see," Johao whispered, as if afraid of disturbing the person on the throne. "Okay, be careful. If there's any problem, evacuate quickly," everyone urged each other and slowly descended. Everyone watched with bated breath, anticipating what was about to happen, their hearts pounding uncontrollably. The total length was 8,844 meters, but only the last 200 meters seemed to take an eternity. When the astronauts' feet finally touched the ground, they finally saw the man's face clearly. "Oh my God," Tony Stark gasped. He was a wealthy man, and he had plenty of experience, but facing what he saw, he felt like an elementary school student entering a history museum for the first time. The figure sitting on the throne looked human. But it was a statue. A statue so lifelike it was practically indistinguishable from the real thing. The craftsmanship was so exquisite that it was almost indistinguishable to the naked eye. They stared in disbelief at the powerful figure beneath the layers of ornate clothing, the imposing demeanor, the distinct strands of hair. Even the most advanced modern technology couldn't achieve such realism. The statue's eyes were slightly closed, as if it were in a deep sleep, or perhaps it was just thinking, and would open them in the next moment. So, even facing the statue, the astronauts dared not act rashly. They held their breath, their eyes constantly examining the statue before them. The figure depicted in the sculpture is strikingly handsome, his heroic features and imposing presence unforgettable. Furthermore, besides the statue on the throne, several ancient long swords stand firmly on the ground at the base of this 8,844-meter-high cavern. The swords vary in style, some with hilts emblazoned with rugged dragon patterns, others with blades gleaming like gemstones. Each one clearly no ordinary item. And there are a surprising 12 of these precious swords. They form a circle around them, forming a formation, with a single, gleaming silver blade at the center. This blade is a three-pointed, two-edged sword. The presence of these fine swords does not diminish its imposing presence. The three-pointed, two-edged sword stands proudly, its gleaming tip shimmering with golden divine patterns. This is the sword used by the divine being who shattered the heavens in our vision earlier, Zhou Hao exclaimed in amazement, his voice barely concealing his surprise. He'd thought he'd never see that awe-inspiring god again. Indeed. But why is this knife here? And it's among so many other swords, like a formation, Tony Stark spoke, gazing at the sword formation before him. He noticed that the already shimmering divine patterns now glowed with a faint light. Everyone observed the formation closely, the swirling shimmer captivating their gaze, a light that seemed to cleanse the soul, making them unable to look away. Is this the power of the ancient god? Even the knife he wielded was so extraordinary. It seems, we've found the cause of the data anomaly. The current formation must be the source, Tony Stark said. His voice was as low as it could go. After all, the lifelike statue was right next to him, its overwhelming power making it difficult to breathe. This should be where the god placed the knife in the vision I saw earlier, Dr. Banner said, his voice tinged with nervousness. But why are there these swords beside the knife? What does this formation mean? Zhou Hao pondered, asking. At this moment, Zhang Minggang, who had been watching the footage from the command center, said, Zhou Hao, come a little closer and take a look. Yes, Zhou Hao replied, gently inching forward. Due to their previous caution, even though they had descended to the bottom of the cave, they were still some distance away from the swords and statues, so the spectator's view was not very clear. Zhou Hao approached, pointed his camera at the sword formation, and examined it carefully. A burst of exclamations rang out. There seems to be some text engraved on the sword, Professor Zhang Minggang excitedly exclaimed, catching a fleeting glimpse on the giant screen. Zhou Hao saw what looked like something engraved on it, and he moved closer to examine it more closely. Unable to contain his curiosity, the other astronauts followed, holding their breath as they gazed at the swords. This is, Zhou Hao muttered, a little disbelieving what he was seeing. The ancient text seemed like a code passed down from ancient times, and once unlocked, it would bring unprecedented changes. At this moment, the hearts of people around the world were connected. Everyone was filled with anticipation and hope, eager to learn what the words read. What message could it possibly convey? Could it be text related to the heaven-splitting god? Whatever it was, it would be humanity's most crucial historical resource for studying the ancient world. Following the astronauts' movements, the screen finally gave a close-up of the text. Everyone's gaze swept over the ancient pictographic characters, their hearts trembling with awe. Though they didn't understand what they said, the writing inexplicably filled them with awe. Professor Feng Min of Wukong University was sweating profusely, his hands frantically searching a dictionary, trying to translate the ancient text. Oh my god, Professor Feng Min looked up the characters, connected them in his mind, and was almost speechless as he understood their meaning. This is Erlang's Henjin, Yang Jian. Even as Professor Feng Min was still in shock, still trying to process this overwhelming amount of information, the satellite command center contacted him. As a leading historian and expert in ancient characters, Zhang Mingyang immediately thought of Professor Feng Minimum. Moreover, he now worked with Professor Lin Feng. We have invited Professor Feng Min from the History Department of Wukong University to interpret the meaning of the ancient characters on the sword for us. When Zhang Mingyang contacted Professor Feng Min, he was very excited to know that he had already known the meaning of the ancient characters. Like the audience, he couldn't wait to know the meaning behind the characters. Professor Feng Min gathered his thoughts and was now much calmer. After connecting online, his gentle voice rang in the ears of all those watching the live broadcast. Hello everyone, we already know that the characters engraved on the sword are the ancient Chinese hieroglyphs, and they are of the same origin as the simplified Chinese we use now. As soon as Professor Feng Min's words came out, a frenzy was set off on the internet. The prehistoric continent is the ancient history of China. I'm already numb. Chapter 90 Erlang Xian Shenzhen. Chapter 90, Erlang manifests the Divine Lord, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 90, Erlang manifests the Divine Lord. No wonder the ancient characters engraved on the sword felt so familiar. Professor Feng Min, who is online, continued. And the ancient characters engraved on the sword read, Kinggiun Maya Adeo Hugo Chong Ning Zhenjin, Sichuan Gadi Wheeling Zian Ho Xianzhen. Erlang manifests the Divine Lord, Yang Jian. As soon as Professor Feng Min finished speaking, everyone erupted in heated discussion again. Erlang manifests the Divine Lord. So majestic, the title Xianzhen suits Yang Jian so well. It sounds so powerful. What kind of era was that with so many gods? I wonder if we'll ever see it again in our lifetime. People passionately discussed, imagined, and lamented, and for a moment, the internet was filled with a confident and cheerful atmosphere. However, the atmosphere at the top of the US government was quite different. Their faces were as black as the bottom of a pot, and they wished they could sell their own satellite for scrap. How much better it would have been if it hadn't been China that discovered all this, but the United States. Even if the carvings were Chinese hieroglyphs, they could claim it as their own, or they could have kept the parts that benefited China from ever seeing the light of day, instead exploiting the discovery of the Great Desolation continent on the moon for development or profit. Yet, now, such a powerful entity was in China's hands, a potential asset for a leap forward in both the nation's soft cultural and hard technological power. Unfortunately, the matter was done, and there was nothing they could do. Moreover, just a few days ago, the lunar surface was barren. The discovery of the Great Desolation continent was in no small part due to the influence of Professor Lin Feng. Of course, the US high-ranking officials didn't know that all this was the result of Lin Feng's arrangements. The empty murals and ruined fairy mountains in the system wall didn't require many points, and he already had plenty, so he had more than enough to create this miracle of his own. Not only that, it's also inscribed, from the beginning of time, all heaven and earth were united. I am the one who makes all things, shining with the four seasons. My fleshly body is immortal, sleeping beneath the moon. The starry sky is vast, and this body is indestructible. I am the Tao, eternal and everlasting. These words resonated like the resounding sound of a bell, each word resonating with the heart. No one knew the power of words could be so captivating. Everyone seemed to behold a peerless, unbearable divine monarch soaring across the heavens. I am the Tao, eternal and everlasting. Truly a powerful being from the prehistoric continent. After reciting the words engraved on the sword, Professor Feng Min fulfilled his duty as a teacher, imparting knowledge and resolving doubts, organizing and conveying the information he had learned. Erlang Xiansheng Divine Lord, Yang Jian, also known as the Pure Source Wonderful Dao Protector of the Nation, Chongning True Lord, Sichuan and Shu Earth Mighty Spirit Manifested Heavenly Venerable, is his full title. He is a heroic general who repeatedly rescued the ancient land from danger. He once studied immortal arts, possessing the ability to control floods and even lift mountains. After diligent cultivation, he finally achieved perfection. After interpreting all this, Professor Feng Min finally accepted the water offered by his assistant. He took a deep breath, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and continued. I was only responsible for interpreting the text and organizing it based on my own understanding. I'm not sure if there are any omissions. Everything still depends on Professor Lin Feng's research. Haha, Professor Feng Min's interpretation is impressive. It solved our urgent problem. I believe Professor Lin Feng will soon conduct new research on this lunar discovery. Zhang Mingyang smiled, his lips unable to close. He thanked Professor Feng Min again and ended the call. Professor Feng Min emerged from the line, dismissed his assistant, and sat alone in the room, staring blankly at the live feed. This 8,844-meter-long cavern, the murals adorning its walls, one could only imagine how rich the treasures must be. This vast sea of information was like a vast treasure trove. Professor Fengmin's face flushed, a surge of happiness welling up within him. What a breakthrough this will be for historical research. Professor Fengmin stood up and paced the room, muttering to himself. Thanks to Professor Lin Feng. If it weren't for Professor Lin Feng, how could we have discovered such a wealth of historical materials on the moon? China will surely have a future. Meanwhile, above the moon, within the cavern, the astronauts continued their work. From the satellite command center, they heard Professor Fengmin's interpretation, gaining a basic understanding of Yang Jian's life story. Excited, they began to examine the ancient sword in greater detail. However, the more they studied and analyzed, the more astonished they became. What kind of craftsmanship is this? Such density and energy, even on the moon. I'd say it's too much. Was human technology this sophisticated even in ancient times? I don't think we can even begin to achieve that now. Tony Stark interrupted their sighs. He frowned anxiously and said, no, there's something wrong. The gravity here is too strong. He paused, slowly raised his head, and looked towards the throne beside him. A chilling sense of intimidation seeped into their hearts. Tony Stark felt his entire body go numb, afraid to move. The other astronauts grew nervous at his appearance, feeling the same oppressive feeling in the air. It was clearly a statue, but why did the flickering light on it make them feel as if Yang Jian's body were moving slightly? The body will not perish, it will sleep forever facing the moon. The starry sky is vast, and this body will never perish. Zhou Hao muttered these words silently, his breath trembling. Could it be, Dr. Banner said, looking at the statue with a look of fear. A tense atmosphere permeated the hollow chamber, their every move gripping the audience on screen. Everyone's heart nearly stopped, their gaze fixed on the figure on the throne. The atmosphere felt like torture. The astronauts seemed frozen in place, their bodies refusing to stir, their hearts trembling, fearful that even the slightest noise would disturb the figure before them. Everyone gazed at the statue, seemingly lost in a deep sleep, their eyes filled with fear. The body indoors, sleeping beneath the moon. The starry sky is vast, this body is immortal, originally thought to simply describe the pursuit of the spirit's immortality despite the body's demise. But this scene, in turn, intensified their suspicions. After witnessing such a magnificent vision, few doubted that the divine monarch would truly be resurrected. No, perhaps he had never died. The hearts of those watching the live stream were in their throats. Everyone was so moved that they dared not do anything, fearing they would miss the moment when Erlang Zhenjin awakened. At this point, everyone almost believed that Erlang Zhenjin had simply fallen into deep sleep. No way. Zhou Hao looked at the statue of Erlang Zhenjin and twitched his lips. His facial muscles had become rigid with tension, revealing a look of uncertainty. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 91, Chinese Songs Brainwash SHIELD. Chapter 91, Chinese Songs Brainwash SHIELD 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 91, Chinese Songs Brainwash SHIELD. But, the more I look at it, the more it seems like a real person, Dr. Banner whispered. Everyone was silent, staring blankly at the statue before them. The astronauts were somewhat bewildered, with no one to tell them what to do at this moment. Zheng Mingyang at the command center had been closely monitoring their situation. He made up his mind and, with a wave of his hand, issued an emergency signal to all departments behind him. This meant that if there was an emergency during the lunar landing, the audio line could be directly cut off. The relevant person in charge quickly reported. Emergency measures have been implemented, Zheng Mingyang finally spoke. I have cut the audio line. Now no one except the command center can hear you. Do you feel anything unusual now? Not yet, Zhou Hao said, observing the statue. Everyone knew that the temporary he said was just that. Tony Stark continued. But we don't know exactly when he will move. We're at the bottom of the cave, too far from the surface. Even at our fastest speed, ascending would take some time. And any movement would very likely wake Lord Yang Jian. Yes, We're at the bottom of the cave with Lord Yangjian now. It's far too dangerous, and we'd be overstepping our bounds, Dr. Banner said, his heart tightening. He couldn't imagine how Lord Yangjian would react to if he woke up and saw a few uninvited people standing over him. If that happens, then this data might very well be our last job, Zhou Hao said. His voice was muffled, neither sad nor happy. They had faced Lord Yangjian's power firsthand. That strength, capable of defying heaven and earth, had left them utterly submissive. At that moment, a resigned attitude welled up within them, and everyone was unusually calm. It was a tranquility that only those like them, who had witnessed miracles so often on the moon, could understand. Tony Stark's gaze fell on the statue. Though it remained motionless, a powerful force continued to emanate from it, exerting a powerful pressure on them. This sense of oppression was also transmitted to the people in the command center watching the live broadcast. Zheng Mingyang in the command center felt a dry throat. He swallowed and spoke. Don't be so pessimistic. Perhaps Lord Yangjian doesn't want to take your lives at all, but the problem is, Tony Stark interrupted Zheng Mingyang. The key is not whether he wants to, but whether he can. Lord Yangjian possesses the power to destroy the world. We are to him like ants to an elephant. He certainly has no reason to antagonize ants, but his every move, even a single breath, could end our lives in an instant. Tony Stark's words plunged everyone in the command center into an awkward silence. What he said was too real, too cruel. Some even thought that if they were in the same situation as the astronauts, they would probably have collapsed. At that moment, the hearts of the world were gripped by the astronauts. They waited anxiously, unaware that the live audio feed had been cut off, and they gradually sensed something was amiss. The wait seemed too long, and the astronauts remained motionless throughout. What on earth had happened? American officials were frantic, their minds racing like ants on a hot pan. What's going on? Why can't we hear them? What is China doing? Did they cut off the signal? This moon landing was not only a major event for the world, but also determined whether the monopoly of the American officials could be broken. Seeing no progress, the American officials with vested interests were becoming extremely anxious. Find a way to eavesdrop on their conversations. Quick, we'll get the latest intelligence from Stark, no matter what, the head of Stark quickly responded, but with a blunt refusal. Pepper, the current CEO, gave a succinct reply. Both technically and morally, we're far from capable of doing it, and it's impossible for us to do it. These words were undoubtedly the straw that broke the camel's back. Upon hearing this, Director Pierce of SHIELD slammed his palm down on the desk in front of him. The desk was thick, and the thump echoed through the office like a thunderclap, yet the desk remained undamaged. Only Director Pierce's hand seemed to tremble slightly. He seemed to be enduring something, his face flushed, and he glared at Nick Fury beside him. But his expression was far from intimidating at this moment. Nick Fury pondered his sorrow for a long time before suppressing the smile that had crept into his lips. Although Stark Corporation had refused, another company had good news. We've intercepted the Chinese space signal and are processing it. It will take some time. Very good. Director Pierce breathed a sigh of relief, leaning back in the leather chair, awaiting a response. We've cracked it. We're starting the broadcast now. At these words, Director Pierce's frown relaxed even further as he spoke. Sure enough, at the critical moment, you know who's on our side. As he spoke, his gaze seemingly casually swept over Nick Fury, but the chill in his hawk-like eyes was clearly palpable to Nick Fury. He knew Commissioner Pierce's words were meant for him. But so what? Tony Stark had already defected to China. Even if he truly couldn't return from the moon, having accomplished such a feat, he surely wouldn't regret it. Becoming a heroic pioneer remembered by history, or becoming an obedient eavesdropper, even a child knows the choice. Nick Fury was somewhat surprised that the Chinese signal had been decrypted so quickly. At that moment, the decrypted audio message began playing. Everyone held their breath, curious about what exactly happened to the astronauts in space. In the audible atmosphere, only the audio could be heard. Blue-faced Dawarden steals the Imperial Horse, red-faced Guangong fights in Changsha. Yellow-faced Dian Wei, white-faced Xiao Xiao, black-faced Zhang Fei cries. A burst of passionate opera music echoed through the solemn office of the director of SHIELD. Everyone's face was confused, momentarily unsure of what was happening. Nick Fury was the first to react, his lips already curling up in a slight smile. But Pierce, who had just realized what was happening, was already furious. His face turned blue, then pale, his eyes fixed straight ahead, his hands clenched into fists, cracking. This scene further unsettled Nick Fury's already strained expression. He had seen Peking opera and had a certain understanding of Chinese culture, so he understood the meaning of this familiar tune. He felt as if Director Pierce was singing in unison with the melody's rhythmic rhythms, performing a brilliant face-changing performance. Chapter 92 Where is Professor Lin Feng? Chapter 92 Where is Professor Lin Feng? 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 92 Where is Professor Lin Feng? Nick Fury thought to himself that China's signal was not so easy to crack, but China had a better sense of humor than he thought. A sense of intimacy turned into a kind of enthusiasm and impulse, which made him a little excited. Well, the head of the weapons company wiped his sweat in embarrassment and stammered to save his face. Oh, it may be a song played by China to calm the astronauts. We can listen to it for a while, and maybe we will hear their voices in a while. Of course, well, it is not ruled out that they want to awaken the Honghuang god on this way. Listening to them talking more and more outrageous, even Pierce was powerless to save the situation. The passionate song kept echoing in his ears, and Pierce felt that if they continued listening, everyone might be brainwashed. He hung up the phone in frustration, his face sullen. The arrogance he'd had when banging the table was gone, save for a still aching palm. If the standards of the military-industrial complex, so closely tied to U.S. national security, were this low, then Pierce had no leverage to challenge China. Better to go to bed early, or plan to sell it out. After all, even the head of Stark Group, the last hope of U.S. industry, had become involved in China's moon landing plan. Stark, at the moment of your moon landing, were you thinking about all your old American friends watching you, or about your upcoming journey to explore the untamed continent? Pierce had no doubt that Tony Stark was completely lost in his ecstasy. Even now, when his life was threatened, they hadn't sensed any regrets from Stark in the previous live broadcast. Why exactly are they? Are they truly so desperate to explore China's vast continent? They're abandoning even their own country and their own lives. Or is it, because of that Lin Feng? Pierce whispered, his brow furrowed, his eyes clouded with confusion. Nick Fury overheard his words, his heart seemingly tugged by them. Nick Fury's gaze fell on the long still image, and for a moment, he felt a powerful urge. He wanted to dive through the screen, leap onto the moon, plunge to the bottom of the abyssal void, and wait with Stark and Dr. Banner for the awakening of the ancient Lord Yang Jian. Meanwhile, at the satellite command center, Zhang Mingyang and the entire staff were brainstorming. But half a day had passed, and despite a plethora of ideas and questions, no one knew what to do. After all, even the Chinese, who adored recording history, couldn't find a single piece of historical evidence to guide them in facing the powerful ancient lord. Moreover, it was an incredibly powerful being on the verge of awakening. Just as Zhang Mingyang felt guilty towards the astronauts and unsure how to explain himself to them, an excited voice rang out from the intercom. Look, everyone, it was Zhou Hao. His previously muffled voice became more intense. As he moved, the live broadcast screen displayed everything the astronauts were currently witnessing. The entire command center's attention was focused on the giant screen before them. And those anxiously awaiting the moment around the world finally noticed a change. Although the command center had cut off the audio signal, the live broadcast was still synchronized worldwide. The audience, finally expecting the image change, excitedly gazed at the screen. It's finally moving. What the hell is going on? Look! The statue has changed. It looks like it's moving. Oh my god. Is Lord Yang Jian awakening? They discussed in amazement, precisely the reason Zhou Hao and the others had been so excited. A deep crack was cracking the surface of the world-renowned statue. Like a cracked eggshell, a powerful force bred within seemed to awaken, eager to reach out. Zhang Mingyang at the command center, observing this, quickly ordered the audio signal restored. Zhou Hao, the audio signal will be restored in 10 seconds. Please explain to the audience, and then we will completely cut off all signals. Tony Stark shrugged. While he didn't want things to end this way, he had no better solution. Okay, Zhou Hao replied. Audio signal restored, Zhang Mingyang whispered. Zhou Hao received Zhang Mingyang's signal, adjusted his posture, and solemnly addressed the world. Hello everyone, due to an attack from an unknown force, our signal connection has become unstable. Our connection to the ground is likely to be affected. If you notice the live broadcast screen suddenly goes black, please don't panic. It's just the signal being affected. This explanation was a pre-rehearsed emergency plan, one of dozens of other options. The signal is extremely unstable right now, and will be lost in 20 seconds. As Tony Stark was cooperating, Dr. Banner, who had been silent all along, suddenly spoke up. Wait a minute. We can still contact Professor Lin Feng. As the person with the most knowledge of the primordial continent and the divine Lord Yang Jian, and as the initiator of this moon landing, he's the most likely to know what to do. Perhaps Professor Lin Feng can help us. Dr. Banner's eyes lit up, and he spoke excitedly, his chest heaving. In an instant, the name Lin Feng came to his mind. It was like a ray of light, illuminating their desperate situation. He almost firmly believed that Professor Lin Feng was the key to helping them out of this predicament. Even the mention of Lin Feng at this moment brought him a sense of peace in this critical situation. Dr. Banner's words reached Zheng Mingyang in the command center. The cracks in the statue on the screen continued to widen, as if a crisis was baring its fangs at them. In this uncertain situation, perhaps Professor Lin Feng really could turn the tide, Zheng Mingyang shouted. Contact Professor Lin Feng, he gestured behind him, and the department head understood. This meant the stop signal had been completely cut off. It seemed like they were putting all their eggs in one basket on Professor Lin Feng. Hearts raced around the world. They listened to Professor Zheng Mingyang's decisive and urgent calls from the command center, watched the astronauts' uncertain steps on the screen, and watched the rapidly cracking marks. Their hearts raced, almost audible. Everyone called out Professor Lin Feng's name. Professor Lin Feng. Will he come? Lin Feng was quietly waiting in his assigned spot. The sudden call of Professor Lin Feng startled him. He listened intently, hearing the overwhelming call of Professor Lin Feng from Earth and the astronauts. The urgency of the call even amused him. They had no idea where he was. He was on the moon, waiting for his debut. How could he be found? Chapter 93. Before waking up, the light is dazzling. Chapter 93. Before awakening, the light dazzles. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 93. Before awakening, the light dazzles. But the people on Earth had no idea what Professor Lin Feng was feeling at the moment. They regarded him as their last resort, desperately calling out. Where is Professor Lin Feng? Didn't he tell me before? Where did he go conducting research? Even in the deep mountains and old forests, there shouldn't be a trace left. Check the facial system, we'll definitely find him, but we only have 20 seconds. This is like looking for a needle in a haystack. The more the command center searched, the more worried they became. Professor Lin Feng, clearly a professor, acted like he could even conduct counter-reconnaissance. It was like he'd vanished from the face of the earth. No, it was like he was a deity. He came and went without a trace, and at this critical moment, he was impossible to contact or find. The command center was in a state of panic. The urgency of time made everyone feel a sense of despair, being pushed to the limit. Zheng Mingyang's hands couldn't help but tremble. Are the astronauts just going to be left on the moon? Furthermore, once Lord Yang Jian awakens, with his world-destroying power, even if he just flies to Earth, his wrath could very well turn Earth into the moon. Zheng Mingyang shuddered, daring not to dwell on it any further. He could only pray silently in his heart. Professor Lin Feng, where are you? Please show up soon. Why can't I find Professor Lin Feng? Who is Professor Lin Feng? Why do I feel like he just appeared out of nowhere, and now he's vanished from the sky? So mysterious. People all over the world were extremely nervous, but most had no choice but to stare at the live broadcast, silently cheering on the command center. At this moment, many people couldn't help but imagine how great it would be if they could meet Professor Lin Feng. At this moment, bad news arrived from the moon. Zhou Hao said in a solemn voice. The cracks continue to grow. It won't last much longer. Anomalous temperature fluctuations have been detected, and gravity is exponentially intensifying. We don't have much time left. Tony Stark's calm voice was trembling. After all, with Yang Jian about to awaken, no one could remain calm. Dr. Banner shouted, a little overwhelmed. Have you contacted Professor Lin Feng? He was met with only dead silence. The cracks in the statue were rapidly expanding, as if accelerated. The cracks, which had been spreading steadily, now crackled like firecrackers, a sound that echoed in the hollow bottom, terrifying the senses. Crack. With the last crack, a beam of light suddenly emanated from within the sculpture. It was golden light. That familiar golden light was the same healing and dazzling light they had bathed in their previous illusion. Lin Feng was also keeping an eye on the situation on Earth. Seeing the statue crack, they accelerated their search for him. Not only that, they mobilized all available resources, conducting a comprehensive global search. While Lin Feng was certainly confident he wouldn't be discovered, he had to return and continue being Professor Lin Feng. If even the entire nation couldn't find him, that would be a difficult situation. So he focused his attention and restrained his expression. A stern gaze coldly observed every movement outside. Now, the being occupying Lin Feng's body had become Yang Jian. Suddenly, a dazzling golden light blazed brightly at the bottom of the hollow, seemingly piercing the nearly 9-kilometer-long void and soaring into the sky. No mortal could bear such a light. Everyone squinted, including those watching the live broadcast. The golden light swirled, enveloping the murals, as if awakening them. The eyes of the figures depicted seemed to sparkle, streams seemed to shimmer, and even the animals depicted seemed to smile. It's like the golden light awakened the murals, imbued them with life, Dr. Banner exclaimed in disbelief. For a moment, the sight before him and the golden light that seemed to awaken all things dispelled his inner fear. He stared at the spectacle before him, unblinking. "This is unbelievable," Tony Stark exclaimed. He couldn't hear his own voice, couldn't feel his own presence. Only the light reminded him that he was still breathing. Their words at this moment spoke not only for themselves, but for the thoughts and feelings of the entire world. This light, bright enough to illuminate the entire void, astounded everyone. And this was only when the crack hadn't fully opened. The crack continued to expand. Along with the astronauts, the world watched intently as the crack grew, stunned. Everyone's heart beat in unison. They watched the crack grow larger and larger, until... "It's going to break," Zhou Hao shouted, his face distorted with extreme excitement. They were about to witness the awakening of the divine Lord Yang Jian. Not an illusion, not a hologram, but Yang Jian himself. An ancient, primordial god was about to open his eyes before them. They had come to the moon in search of the primordial continent, and witnessing the awakening of Lord Yang Jian was undoubtedly something they had never dared to imagine, never even dreamed of. And now, it was up to these astronauts to record this event and share it with the people of Earth. What a privilege. Zhou Hao's previous fear had long since vanished, and only a steel-hardened resolve remained in his heart. He must witness Lord Yang Jian's awakening. Then, an ethereal voice echoed. It was like the sound of orchids blooming in a valley, or the rustling of morning dewdrops. It was so subtle, so beautiful, yet everyone felt they had heard it. That profound voice, like the voice of the primordial truth of the universe, echoed in the void, cleansing everything. Everyone felt a strange emptiness and tranquility within them, as if bathing in sacred spring waters. From the beginning of time, all heaven and earth were united. I am the being of all things, shining with the 4 seasons. My flesh is immortal, sleeping beneath the moon. The starry sky is vast, my body is indestructible. I am the Tao, eternal and everlasting. For some reason, Tony Stark recalled the words engraved on the sword. At that moment, he felt as if he understood something, his mind alight. Wow, in an instant, golden light burst forth once more, not just before the eyes, but also in the hearts and minds of the people. For a moment, everyone seemed to behold a series of visions. They saw golden light burst forth, illuminating the sky like stars, bursting through the void. They saw brilliant light sweep across the sky like wings, and they saw beams of colorful light bloom across the horizon. What on earth is this? Zhang Minggang, in the command center, was transfixed by the dazzling light. He glanced at the screen, which was now ablaze with divine golden light. Boundless divine light, like a tsunami, burst forth from the void into the sky. Chapter 94 Return to the Human World. Chapter 94, Return to the Human World, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 94, Return to the Human World. Light emanated from the void, flowing continuously across the lunar surface. If the people of Earth looked toward the sky at this moment, they would see the moon shimmering with a brilliant golden light, as if a string of bright light was wrapped around its plump neck. Endless ancient patterns rippled across the sky. The swords at the bottom of the void trembled, and an ancient roar echoed. At this moment, heaven and earth resounded in unison, the light dazzling, and everyone's heart trembled with the earth. Gradually, the light faded, revealing a majestic figure sitting firmly on the throne in the backlight. The figure was tall and strong, and even though it was still unclear in the backlight, the awe-inspiring majesty was unstoppable. The light gradually faded, revealing a heroic face before everyone. His features were almost identical to the statue, But the difference was that he was even more handsome in person. The aura that emanated from him, the brilliance in his eyes and brows, was beyond the reach of a statue. A hollow light shimmered with the golden light as his steady breathing echoed, as if cheering his awakening. Under the azure golden light, he finally slowly raised his eyes. His gaze was so deep and powerful, even surrounded by light, its piercing power remained undimmed. The stunned astronauts finally understood what it meant to see through 1,000 years. It was a look that transcended life and death, piercing the vast rivers of time. It was the gaze of an ancient deity, capable of creating the universe and the earth, looking down on everything. Everyone felt a bang in their heads, as if something had exploded, as if something was being destroyed. A clear thought filled their minds. The powerful being who could split the sky and step on the moon had, at that moment, fully awakened. Erlang the Divine Lord, Yang Jian, awakened. The return of the Supreme Being to the world shook everyone's heart. The 4 astronauts held their breath, afraid to speak or move. Their eyes were glued to Yang Jian's face, awaiting his command. Not only the 4 of them present, but the entire world seemed to stand still. Even Zhang Mingyang at the command center remained silent. Everyone waited, awaiting Yang Jian's move. What would this ancient deity say to his descendants? What instructions and influence would he have on the future of humanity? And what would he do to the 4 astronauts before him? All these questions swirled in everyone's minds, but Yang Jian, the center of everyone's attention, sat indifferent. He frowned slightly, his forehead resting nonchalantly on his hand. Even so, the mere blink of his eyes was enough to stir up a storm in everyone's hearts. In that vision, they had witnessed the immense power of Lord Yang Jian. His graceful, majestic figure still lingers in many people's minds. No one could have imagined that this ancient lord would awaken before their very eyes. Seconds passed, and the initial excitement of many at Yang Jian's awakening gave way to fear. Faced with a power disparity so vast it could crush everything, everyone regained their instinctive fear. The world fell into dead silence, a heavy oppression enveloping everyone. The nearly 9-kilometer-long cavern was lined with murals depicting Yang Jian's achievements, each one capable of creating the world. But the shock of all was far less than the power of a single glance. At that moment, a rustling sound rang out. The sword formations, which had been vibrating and roaring, trembled, as if trying to shake off the dust that had clung to them over millennia, welcoming Lord Yang Jian's return with a fresh face. The ground, trembling slightly with the trembling of the sword formation buried within, began to tremble. The long sword suddenly detached itself from the earth and soared into the sky. The dust that erupted instantly from its withdrawal splattered like blood. The trembling sound of the 12 swords ceased. They flew through the sky in a shimmering golden light, then, as if on a report, lined up before the divine Lord Yang Jian. The swords shone brightly, and the light left by the swords dancing in the void began to move on its own, gathering as if with life, forming a word. In an instant, everyone in the world could clearly see the 2 words formed by the sword light, Tai. The moment the words formed, the man finally moved. His clenched hand curled slightly, and the moment the tiny movement formed, the 3-pointed, 2-edged sword rushed towards him, summoning him. He held his sword firmly, without moving a single movement, simply closing his eyes. Everyone in the world was awed by the aura of who was grasping the 3-pointed, 2-edged sword, especially the astronauts standing before him. The 4 of them trembled uncontrollably, unable to take their eyes off the gleaming silver blade in Yang Jian's hand. At that moment, a regal voice echoed in their minds. I have slumbered for so long, and the great desolate continent has undergone tremendous changes. During my wanderings in the ethereal universe, I received a divination that a man named Lin Feng would be the one who would awaken me in the future. Now I've awakened, but who are you? Zhou Hao's heart tightened. He hadn't expected the Divine Lord to mention Professor Lin Feng's name upon awakening. It turned out they had been right to seek out Professor Lin Feng. However, they didn't know Professor Lin Feng's whereabouts. But under the Divine Lord Yang Jian's aura, he steeled himself and answered immediately. Professor Lin Feng is the initiator of this moon landing project. He can indeed be said to have awakened you. And we 4 are the ones who have come to search for the great desolate continent, shouldering the mission of our nation and family, because Yang Jian was communicating with them through his mind. It was like an encrypted conversation for the audience watching the live broadcast. Although everyone was anxious to know what had happened, they were more astonished by Yang Jian's abilities than the details. They watched Zhou Hao's responses, but Yang Jian didn't even lift his thin lips. This ancient entity and extraordinary power filled them with amazement. All those wonders just now were truly amazing. I was stunned watching them at home. How did he accomplish this? I've only seen this ability in novels, and it's actually possible. Oh my god, if Lord Yangjian wanted to, could we on Earth also use his voice? The key is, who is Professor Lin Feng? Why does Lord Yangjian know about him? I have a feeling he's something special. The atmosphere erupted in discussion, the dead silence fading into frenzy. Everyone gradually sensed that this ancient deity seemed friendly. Then, Yangjian's voice rang out again. This time, his voice wasn't just in the astronauts' minds, it echoed clearly in everyone's ears. The human race is no longer as powerful as it once was, but it can still survive. His voice trembled as everyone shuddered. A wave-like echo reverberated through their ears. Before anyone could register what Divine Lord Yangjian had said, his powerful voice echoed again. This calamity will be the day I awaken. I will return to China and once again be with the mortal world. Chapter 95 The Lost Miracle. Chapter 95, The Vanishing Miracle 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster Chapter 95, The Vanishing Miracle. As soon as Yangjian's words uttered, Tony Stark was instantly stunned. What kind of power was this? Even wearing a spacesuit, he could hear Lord Yangjian's words so clearly. His voice seemed to vibrate the air around him, echoing through everyone's minds. I will return to China, to the human world once more. Lord Yangjian will return to the human world once more? This meant he was going to Earth, to China? As everyone digested this tremendous news, a flash of golden light suddenly burst forth before their eyes. In a flash, gleaming silver armor and a crimson cape came into view. Lord Yangjian, clad in military uniform, looked awe-inspiring, his face like the bright moon and his brows like cold pine trees. The three-pointed, double-edged sword in his hand gleamed with dazzling brilliance, as if eager to join him in the battle. With a casual wave of his hand, a dazzling slash of blades blossomed before everyone's eyes. As everyone stared in amazement at the radiant light in the void, Divine Lord Yangjian stepped forward, and a golden formation materialized beneath his feet. A halo of light suddenly shone from the ground, enveloping Divine Lord Yangjian's sacred form. The moment it shone with the heavens and the earth, everyone closed their eyes. A moment later, when they opened their eyes, Divine Lord Yangjian was gone. Everyone stared blankly at the empty cave floor, as if Divine Lord Yangjian would reappear in the next moment. Divine Lord Yangjian's powerful voice seemed to still ring in their ears, and the golden light that followed him seemed to flicker in the void. After a long moment, someone sighed, as if awakening from a dream. Is this an ancient deity? I never thought I'd see this in my lifetime. I'm so lucky. Didn't Lord Yangjian say he'd come back to China, to the human world again? I'm so excited. He seems very friendly to humans. It seems our astronauts will return safely. Everyone was excited, their eyes sparkling with endless anticipation for the future. Everyone had a premonition that something had changed, a new era had arrived, and perhaps the symbol of the new era began on this day. Many people thought of Professor Lin Feng's words, that the people sleeping in the primeval world would gradually awaken, and this might just be the beginning. The idea that someone as powerful as Lord Yangjian would awaken one after another and appear on Earth, in the human world, was something no one dared to imagine. After all, this incident had made everyone realize the limits of their imagination. The people on Earth felt like frogs in a well, and the knowledge that a greater world was about to unfold before them filled them with joy. No one knew what the future would hold, but they already longed to meet the awakened gods of the primordial world once again. The live stream continued. The golden light left by Lord Yangjian still permeated the hollow. The astronauts, still enchanted by his presence, watched in a daze as the golden light gradually faded. If it weren't for the continued presence of the golden light, they would have suspected that all the incredible visions they had witnessed were dreams. Fortunately, there was this dazzling golden light, and the endless mural stretching across the nearly 9-kilometer-long stone wall. The intense golden light had earlier soared into the sky, illuminating the entire wall. Now, the light gradually faded, leaving only the murals at the bottom of the cavern visible, while the remaining vast area was once again shrouded in darkness. How are you all doing? Zhang Mingyang's voice echoed. Their command center had also been engaged in a heated discussion, with cheers and curiosity, but it took a while for them to calm down. We're finishing up the data collection and sorting out a void. We expect to begin our return journey in a quarter of an hour, Zhou Hao said. His voice still tinged with excitement, but the task at hand kept him calm. After all, Any bit of data from the void was a valuable resource for Earth's research, and they couldn't afford to be careless. Okay, collect it as quickly as possible, and strive for a safe return, Zhang Mingyang breathed a sigh of relief and ordered. Yes, Zhou Hao agreed, and was about to continue collecting when a sudden exclamation rang out. Oh my god, everyone looked at him upon hearing the voice. What's going on? Zhang Mingyang in the command center was also startled, his heart pounding. What happened again? Tony Stark's voice was strained, and he took a deep breath. Our data is returning to normal. The previous gravity problem was most likely caused by Supreme God Yang Jian. That's too, Dr. Banner exclaimed in disbelief. He had never imagined that the ancient deity could possess such immense power. However, the shock didn't delay them for long. The astronauts each busied themselves with their tasks, methodically carrying out their exploration and information gathering. A sense of relief washed over everyone. The disappearance of the Supreme God Yang Jian was like the exit of the protagonist in a grand ballet, marking the end of the lunar landing. Zhang Mingyang at the command center breathed a sigh of relief, but then a sense of powerlessness, a result of excessive tension, washed over him. As everyone breathed a sigh of relief, a question also surfaced: where is Professor Lin Feng now? Why has a global search yielded no trace of him? Wukong University's explanation that Professor Lin Feng had taken leave for research couldn't deter the search. After all, even if he had taken leave to conduct research, there couldn't be no trace of him anywhere. And on such a crucial day, could Professor Lin Feng not be paying attention to the lunar landing mission he was leading? These thoughts gripped everyone, and as they delved deeper, they realized that the mysteries surrounding Professor Lin Feng only grew more and more. After the return from the lunar landing, all matters needed to be spearheaded by Professor Lin Feng. Without him, academic research would be leaderless. Consequently, curiosity and anxiety arose nationwide, with a desperate attempt to find Professor Lin Feng. Naturally, public anxiety fermented online on platforms like Weibo. Terms like Professor Lin Feng, where is Professor Lin Feng, and Professor Yang Jian Shenzhen Lin Feng quickly dominated the top 3 trending searches, even giving way to Yang Jian Shenzhen. Beyond Weibo, numerous forums and video sites, large and small, were also devoted to Lin Feng, posting content. Some offered rational analysis, others played memes, and most engaged in heated and eager discussion. If the discovery of the prehistoric continent and the awakening of Yang Jian Shenzhen signaled the dawn of a new era, then Professor Lin Feng's presence was a prophet of this new era. Only he could offer guidance at this critical juncture. Not only the Chinese internet, but also the foreign internet was going crazy for Professor Lin Feng. Can anyone tell me who this Lin Feng is? 237. Chapter 236 Beauty, you look like a star. 236, Beauty, you look like a star. 2024-11-15, Author, Good Monster. Who are you? The helicopter was loaded with snipers, originally prepared to deal with the terrorists. Now, all of them trained their rifles on Erlang Shin, and the sound of rifles loading could be heard. Facing Lin Feng, they were filled with fear, nervous and terrified. Lin Feng's gaze grew even colder, and a chilling aura emanated from him. How dare you, mortals, attack this god? He repeated these words, sending a chill down everyone's spines. He'd already said it once, and they hadn't actually attacked him. Just pointing a gun at him, had he become angry? Many wondered, and as their hearts grew cold, they saw Lin Feng charging forward. His massive hand tightly grasped a helicopter. The snipers and pilots in the helicopter heard the aircraft creak. Cracks appeared on the helicopter, and everyone watched helplessly as it shattered under Lin Feng's massive hand. No, at this moment, Lin Feng had transformed into Erlang Shen. He possessed the majesty of a god, sacred and inviolable. Yang Ji was a formidable figure, commanding 100,000 celestial soldiers and possessing the aura of an extraordinary commander. If he could be easily bullied and pointed at, how could he command so many Jin soldiers? HMPH, your ants, dare you challenge the majesty of this god? Lin Feng's voice boomed like thunder. He gripped the helicopter tightly in his enormous palm, gave it a sudden squeeze, and flung it to the ground. With a thud, the helicopter crashed to the ground, but Lin Feng spared no harm, and the people inside were unharmed. The helicopter, however, shattered upon impact, debris scattered across the ground. Seeing this, other helicopters swooped down to check on the crew. The sniper and pilot emerged, dusty but otherwise unharmed. Who the hell is this? It's terrifying, This is definitely not one of our Western gods. I heard an Eastern immortal has descended. What's the difference between a god and an immortal? They whispered, their eyes filled with fear and shock. Some who knew something about Eastern immortals already understood the whole story. I know this immortal. His name is Erlang Shen. He's a leading general among the native Eastern immortals. He possesses the power to move mountains and fill seas. His strength is among the highest among the immortals. Some admired Erlang Shen immensely, noting that he was clad in armor. He had 3 eyes, the third of which was closed, yet the aura he exuded was already formidable. Erlang Shen turned to look at the terrorist and took a step forward. And, Erlang Shen sighed contemptuously. Killing you would dirty my hands, let me go, and I'll spare your life. As soon as he finished speaking, the terrorist collapsed to the ground, trembling and afraid to move. He didn't even dare to utter a single word. Lin Feng was speechless. He was a little tired of playing the role of Erlang Shen. This opponent was too weak to rouse his interest. How? Erlang Shen chuckled mockingly, then stretched out his body, flew into the sky, and disappeared. Everyone was stunned. The crisis was resolved in an instant. Even though Erlang Shen had left, the terrorist did not dare to act rashly again. The helicopters in the sky finally reacted and landed. By the way, there are other terrorists lurking throughout the United States. Since Hashimoto Kanzuki wants to solve these problems, he will help out. Lin Feng smiled and flew to the city center. At this moment, the phone in his trouser pocket rang. Lin Feng was stunned for a moment, and quickly answered the call. Hashimoto Kanzuki's voice came from the other end. Lin Feng, where are you now? We are having a barbecue here. Lin Feng glanced at the time. It was indeed evening. I'm out of town. Didn't I tell you, even things need a time frame, right? We might be late for the barbecue. If you can't come, remember to come find us. I've shared the address. Hashimoto Kanzuki's voice was sweet and gentle. After she finished, she hung up and sent Lin Feng a text message with his location. The message made Lin Feng's eyelids twitch. Why does it say you're abroad? Am I seeing things? The signal's really bad. Lin Feng smiled but didn't respond, slipping his phone back into his pocket. He had to quickly finish his business here before returning to join Hashimoto Kanzuki for barbecue. Since they'd invited him, he'd better obey. Lin Feng's figure vanished in an instant. Erlang Shen had only appeared briefly. After resolving the matter, another half-hour passed before Lin Feng returned. His figure flashed above the hotel as Erlang Shen flew into the room. Once inside, Lin Feng regained his human form and went to the bathroom for a shower. Feeling refreshed, he pulled out his phone to check the news. In the United States, an explosive piece of news shocked the nation. Lin Feng curled his lips, made no comment, and set his phone aside. He blow-dried his hair, grabbed his bag and phone, and rushed to the barbecue stand where Hashimoto Kanai and Zhao Halen were enjoying their meal. He took a deep breath and happened to see 2 beautiful women. Their hair was hanging down, not tied up. They were looking very sweet and lovely as they ate their barbecue. Lin Feng smiled and walked over, setting his bag aside. Ladies, I'm here. Hashimoto Kanai looked up and snorted coldly. You're late. You have to drink. Hashimoto Kanai was furious. Lin Feng had made her wait so long today, only to show up now. Why are you so late? I asked you for help earlier, and you didn't say anything. Hashimoto Kanai scolded him a few times, then said nothing more and continued to enjoy her barbecue. Although the matter was not a big deal for her, it still made her feel a little unhappy. As she lowered her head, a glint in her eyes flickered. A few beads of sweat oozed from Hashimoto Kanai's palms, and a faint fragrance emanated from her body. Lin Feng walked towards her, staring at her, his eyes also glimmering with a faint light. Are you angry? His voice was slightly hoarse, and his eyes were full of concern. Lin Feng's voice also revealed a bit of worry. He admitted that he had indeed been a little negligent after going to the United States. I'm not angry. Hashimoto Kanai shook her head gently. However, there was a hint of contradiction in her words, and Lin Feng could see that she was indeed a little unhappy. It's not that I didn't want to help before, but the world has its own order, and I can't act rashly, Lin Feng said, taking out his mobile phone and handing it to Hashimoto Kanai. Take a look for yourself. Hashimoto Kanai looked down and checked. The phone was full of news. After reading it, she covered her mouth in astonishment. Erlang Shen, what's going on? She looked up at Lin Feng, her eyes full of surprise. You're saying that a male deity intervened, so you... Hashimoto Kanai shook her head again. No, You couldn't have known Erlang Shen would intervene. What I mean is, the world has its own laws, and evildoers never get what they deserve. Lin Feng smiled as he sat beside her. His words, a bit childish, drew the attention of several young men in the nearby stalls. One of them, wearing an Adidas shirt, looked quite wealthy. His eyes narrowed as they wandered over Hashimoto Kanayu. His attention was particularly drawn to the side of another beautiful woman, Zhao Heilin, sitting beside her. Zhao Heilin was equally stunning, her long black hair framing her delicate face. The young man's eyes lit up at the sight of the two beauties. Several other young men beside him also stood up. "What's up, Brother Chen? Are you attracted to those two beauties?" the crowd asked jokingly. Then, they approached Hashimoto Kanayu and Zhao Heilin and struck up a conversation. "Two beauties, could you have a drink with her, Brother Chen?" Lin Feng frowned upon hearing this. He stood up and refused on behalf of the two ladies. No, his tone was somewhat cold, but his frame seemed rather frail. Some of these young men were regular gym-goers, their physiques much stronger than Lin Feng's. One of them stepped forward and shoved his shoulder into Lin Feng. A glint flashed in Lin Feng's eyes, and his expression instantly darkened. "It's an honor for these two ladies to have a drink with her, Brother Chen. What right do you have to refuse?" Lin Feng's face darkened, a coldness in his eyes. "What did you say?" He looked up at the young man working out and placed a hand on his shoulder. The people around him looked up and whispered, occasionally glancing at Lin Feng. Their gazes averted, not daring to look any further. Lin Feng heard someone whisper, "This Brother Chen is quite influential. I heard his family is a publicly listed company with assets exceeding 100 million. Hearing this, Lin Feng understood the situation, and his eyes grew even colder. He strode forward, approaching the group. His gaze was no longer cold, for these people were not worth his attack. At that moment, Hashimoto Keijetsu approached, smiling at the group. Hashimoto Kanayu's smile was as beautiful as a flower, captivating her beauty. The young man, Mr. Enzijin, was stunned. Deeply captivated by Hashimoto Kanayu's beauty, he couldn't help but reach out to touch her soft, tofu-like face. Hashimoto Kanayu stepped back, avoiding his hand and winking at him. She spoke, her voice sweet and captivating, "Mr. Enzijin, what do you want?" Her voice was not only sweet but also brimming with charm. She stepped forward. "Want me to drink with you? How about an arm wrestling match?" Hashimoto Kanayu winked and asked with a smile. She was no ordinary person. Working in the intelligence agency, she was naturally formidable. Even a tall, burly man would be powerless against her. Hashimoto Kanayu stepped forward again, staring at the man before her. "Why aren't you looking me in the eye?" Lin Feng, seeing Hashimoto Kanayu handling the situation with ease, sat down and continued drinking. Murmurings arose all around him, saying how pathetic it was that he couldn't even protect his own woman. "How do you know that woman is his girlfriend? Maybe they were just friends. I heard that there is a new kind of relationship that is very popular now." A young man raised his voice. People gathered around and looked at him curiously. "What kind of relationship?" He smiled slowly. "It's called a spare tire." The people around him burst into laughter, almost laughing to death, and they did not have much kindness towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng's eyes were cold. He took a sip of beer, and said nothing. "People say that people in this country are very polite, but that's not entirely true." Lin Feng sneered and waited for Hashimoto Huanayu to deal with him. Hashimoto Huanayu bit her lower lip lightly and leaned close to Lin Feng's ear. "I thought people in our country were all polite. You haven't seen this kind of rogue yet, so you don't feel anything." Lin Feng just smiled. "To deal with such people, just ignore them." There was a coldness in his smile, and finally condensed into frost. Hashimoto Huanayu flicked his sleeves and said to Enzijin, "If you can beat me in arm wrestling, I will have a drink with you. If you lose, we will drink all night. How about it?" That sweet smile was like a white lotus blooming in the night. Such a smile fascinated all the men present. They burst into laughter and moved closer to Hashimoto Kanayu. They thought that Hashimoto Kanayu was an approachable woman, and perhaps they could develop a special relationship with her. They always have all kinds of ideas, especially those men with a little status, who always think that women will throw themselves into their arms. They looked at Hashimoto Kanayu, their eyes flashing with desire. Hashimoto Kanayu pulled over a chair and sat down. "If you want to drink with me, come and arm wrestle with me." When she smiled, her teeth were as white as jade, like the bright moon in the sky. Even Zhao Helen stood up, thinking that this seemed not so good. She thought it was better not to cause trouble. What's wrong with that? Hashimoto Kanayu smiled and turned back, winking playfully. This is not what I want, but if someone wants to drink with me, I have to respond. After Hashimoto Kanayu finished speaking, he looked back at the men. Many men were excited and volunteered to arm wrestle with Hashimoto Kanayu. They didn't expect such a beautiful girl to be so open. They thought they could get the upper hand by arm wrestling. Lin Feng tightened the wine glass in his hand, took a sip of wine, moved a chair and sat next to Hashimoto Kanayu. Oh, it turns out that this man is really the girl's boyfriend. Do you feel sorry for her now? Why didn't they know before? This man looks like a loser. Everyone talked about it and wanted to see what would happen. Many men were eager to move but did not dare to act. After all, there was Nzijin, the rich second generation, here. They did not dare to interfere and could only wait for Nzijin to arm wrestle first. Do you think you can still date this beauty? It's over after one wrestling. She's gone with her. How can you date her? A man shook his head and sighed. Maybe the beauty just came here to meet Nzijin by chance. As soon as these words came out, some people nodded in agreement, and they all agreed with this idea. After all, this is a roadside stall. How could such a beauty come here? Hashimoto Huanayu just smiled, and no one noticed that her smile did not reach her eyes. She stroked her hair, and her smile became even more intense. Sir, do you want to come? She smiled and looked up, and her eyes met Nzijin's. Nzijin was instantly attracted and walked forward. I want to arm wrestle with you. If I win, you will come to my house with me, Nzijin said word by word. Hashimoto Huanayu's face changed slightly, but her smile remained unchanged. Can you hurry up? I can't wait any longer, Hashimoto Huanayu said coquettishly, and no one heard the coldness in her voice. Chapter 97 The First Agent. Chapter 97, First Agent 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster Chapter 97, First Agent. Just as Natasha Romanoff was monitoring Steve Rogers, she received a message from Nick Fury. She had just finished watching the live broadcast from the lunar surface. The magnificent view and the arrogant figure on the moon softened her long cold heart. She had half surprised that the U.S. high-ranking officials behind the screen would be furious, but she hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. Of course, she wasn't surprised. When will the operation begin? As a top-tier agent, Natasha Romanoff always focused on her duties and never asked irrelevant questions. Cold as ice, beautiful as a peach and plum perfectly suited her. Of course, the term femme fatale also applied to her. Even with her expressionless face, her allure shone through in every gesture. But beneath her graceful figure lay a hard heart. After Sue was injected with a serum, her ageless appearance had lasted 4 years, operating like a machine, simply following orders and her instincts, executing each mission with impeccable precision. Nick Fury's reaction was as he anticipated. He replied, I'll let you know the specific time. I contacted you first so you can prepare. This mission is very special, and the higher-ups are taking it very seriously. You're practically taking on the entire Washington, D.C., so you must be extremely cautious, understood, Natasha said bluntly. Meanwhile, in China, Lin Feng made the transition from Moon to Earth almost instantly. A single step made a world of difference. He reached the summit of the mountains, breathing in the refreshing breeze of the pine trees in the valley, and a sense of exhilaration washed over him. This place was indeed a perfect place to rest. Furthermore, he was located at the very top of the mountains, devoid of human presence and no signal at all. This made it easier for him to explain. Having just completed a mission, Lin Feng felt a little tired, so he simply sat cross-legged in the mountains to rest quietly. The sun shone brightly on him, a warm sensation on his neck. He comfortably gazed down at the mountains and rivers, the entire city taking in his view. The mountain breeze blew the hem of his clothes, causing them to billow like a flag on the mountain top. Just as he wondered when they would find him, a voice from the system rang out. Ling. Congratulations, Master, on completing the random mission. Mission details: play a Zerlang Shen, be excavated from the moon, shock the world, and then descend into the mortal realm. Shock value reward being calculated. Calculation completed. Congratulations, Master, on receiving 5 million shock value points. Even though Lin Feng had expected this, he was still a little incredulous when he heard the number. Over 1 million shock points, that's a lot. It was truly remarkable given the worldwide attention it brought. It had actually broken through 1 million, and 5 million at that. A number that had once seemed unimaginable to him was now a tangible achievement. It seemed that this moon landing had truly astonished the world. With that, raising the role-playing card level was just around the corner. While the points required to level up were indeed considerable, the points earned with each mission were also substantial. Not to mention, Yang Jian's appearance was just the beginning. I'll give another lecture right after I get back, and the points will continue to increase. Lin Feng's plan grew more cheerful. Unlocking the next level of his character card shouldn't be far off. Although he'd put in a lot of preparation for this trip to the moon, it now seemed worth it. The plot of Avengers 1, followed by Thor, then Captain America. The Dark Elves invasion should be coming soon, and Loki should be busy with that for now. Lin Feng sorted out the upcoming plot, thinking about how to arrange Erlang Shen's appearance in the mortal world. No matter what, he had to shock the world to earn more points. At the same time, he also had to pay attention to innovation. After all, in this fast-paced society, everyone's nerves are constantly stimulated and their attention is distracted. Therefore, the way, method, and even the timing of each appearance are extremely important. They must be eye-catching and unique. The moment Lin Feng returned to Earth, he was already locked onto satellites. Experts from around the world were rushing toward the mountaintop where he stood. Lin Feng stood up and gazed at the towering cliff. A sense of impending storm enveloped the entire summit. He curled his lips in a smile. He had been worried about the lack of an opportunity, but now it had arrived. Among the experts rushing toward Lin Feng, the majority were Chinese. Almost as soon as the satellites detected Lin Feng, they received urgent orders to immediately and safely bring Professor Lin Feng back. China was well aware of the U.S.'s intentions. Washington was well aware of the U.S. government's willingness to resort to any means necessary to achieve its goals, so their hearts were tense, fearing any mishap for Lin Feng. But they never imagined that Lin Feng, the very one they were worried about, had already anticipated everything that was about to happen. He waited idly for Natasha's arrival, feeling a little amused. Thor, Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, all had already rushed to join China, fearing that China would reject them if they delayed any further. And now, Natasha Romanoff, SHIELD's top agent, was actually running into his own hands, under the orders of his confused superiors. Lin Feng shook his head and smiled. Then I'll gladly accept it, Agent Romanoff. Professor Lin Feng's disappearance sent turmoil throughout China and even the world. Many people, uninformed about the situation, joined the search for Lin Feng. For a time, searching for Professor Lin Feng became like a slogan, with everyone discussing and participating online and offline. Search groups sprang up like mushrooms after a rain. While most were just online fun, mostly in chat groups, countless professional search teams had already begun operations. Furthermore, some illegal organizations had located Professor Lin Feng's approximate location. By then, several forces had infiltrated this beautiful mountainous area. Their orders were largely the same: whoever found Lin Feng would receive a generous reward. But if they can't find Lin Feng, then they'll kill him. Hundreds of people were searching the vast mountainous area, keeping an eye on Lin Feng's movements while constantly wary of plots from their companions. After all, in this critical moment, the fewer enemies there were, the greater the chance they would find Lin Feng. Meanwhile, above the clouds, Agent Natasha was ready to drop from 10,000 meters. After all, this was Chinese territory, and the United States didn't dare get too close. Otherwise, before Lin Feng even caught sight of them, they'd all be finished. This is the lowest altitude we can descend. It doesn't matter, it's enough, a pleasant female voice said coldly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 98 Who is Coming? Chapter 98 Who is Coming? 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 98 Who is Coming? As expected of you, Professor Lin Feng's general location is already in your device. Although the details cannot be confirmed, his movement speed is not fast. You should be able to catch up with him. The Chinese army will be here soon. You must find Professor Lin Feng before they arrive. Good luck, Agent Romanoff. Natasha was lowering her head to confirm that her equipment was worn correctly. After confirming, she looked out of the helicopter to check the situation. The breeze blew her fiery red hair. Her expression was cold, as if she didn't hear the words at all. The door of the cabin opened with a crisp metallic click. As the doors on both sides gradually opened, a strong wind rushed in. Natasha stood motionless. She looked down. The thick clouds covered the rolling green hills. Her pupils were reflected in a vast expanse of white. But she didn't even frown. With a swift step, she leaped straight into the boundless clouds. The communication device in her ear rang, and the voice of the person coming was clear over the whistling wind. Dozens of organizations are already on the mountain seeking Professor Lin Feng. Don't let them see you. Kill them if necessary. Your mission is to bring Lin Feng back, but if anything goes wrong, leave him alive. Natasha's eyes flickered slightly, a cold glint in them. She didn't answer, and descended directly to the ground below. Meanwhile, the massive online search for Lin Feng was still underway. Although most of the day had passed, the enthusiasm for participation had outweighed the actual progress. However, during the discussion, a strange situation was discovered. People from all corners of the country gathered together to exchange information, and unexpectedly discovered something. Across China, there have been numerous unexplained disappearances recently, and many of these cases remain unsolved. Many people vanished, seemingly evaporating into thin air. Some returned to their disappearance sites hours later, but many more vanished forever. These cases remain unexplained, and many speculate whether they involve a parallel dimension. Could Professor Lin Feng be one of the victims? What on earth is going on? It's too mysterious. What kind of thing is this? Could it be alien-related? Everyone engaged in a flurry of discussion, with many netizens helping to pin the incident to the top of social media platforms, raising the profile of the disappearances. Their actions quickly attracted the attention of relevant authorities, even alarming Chen Haitian of the National Security Bureau. Chen Haitian gazed at the pile of documents stacked before him, a frown growing between his brows. With so many disappearances nationwide, this case hadn't initially garnered their attention. After all, no one had initially linked the cases together, instead handling them separately, so naturally, the news wouldn't have reached him. Furthermore, he had been preoccupied with matters related to the moon landing, so these strange details had slipped past him. Chen Haitian's primary concern was that Professor Lin Feng might be implicated in this case. While there are currently varying opinions, it's not impossible that a special force is manipulating all this. What if Professor Lin Feng is also involved? Everyone is waiting to find Professor Lin Feng and have him take charge. Chen Haitian drummed his knuckles nervously on the table, each tapping more and more anxiously. That can't be right. Professor Lin Feng can't be involved in this, but look at the timing. The cluster of cases happened right around the time he took leave from Wukong University. Chen Haitian felt a burning sensation at this thought and hurriedly stood up and headed for the door. He was terrified, fearing something had happened to Professor Lin Feng. Furthermore, regardless of whether this matter was related to Professor Lin Feng or not, they had to resolve it as soon as possible and couldn't let it go on. If it truly was linked to an alien force, it had to be contained immediately, or the consequences would be disastrous. He arrived at a meeting room, where the relevant departments were already waiting at the table. The agent stood up and reported. Director Chen, we've located the location where the disappearances are frequent. Shall we set out now to investigate? Chen Haitian gave the order bluntly. Go immediately to the area surrounding the incidents and investigate the situation. Be sure to cordon it off and conduct relevant tests. Report any developments immediately. Also, cooperate with the local police to investigate the missing persons' information and locations, looking for any clues. Go quickly. Quickly. Meanwhile, amidst the mountains, a team of internationally notorious mercenaries, armed and cautious, treaded the woods. Their reward for this mission was substantial. If they succeeded, they could finally leave their perilous existence behind. Boss, we're getting a heat signal. There's a figure ahead. Is that Lin Feng? The burly man known as the boss's eyes lit up. To think the god of wealth would arrive so soon. This war-torn team, hailing from a war-torn region, had been battle-hardened. Their ability to survive these bloody battles stemmed not only from their superior training compared to other organizations, but also from their ruthlessness. They followed the law of the jungle, where the strong preyed on the weak, and wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice their teammates when necessary. But before that, the more people, the stronger their ability, especially considering the lucrative reward this time. Boss, the thermal imagery ahead shows only one person. That must be Lin Feng, that must be him. Who else would come to this desolate mountain alone? Even the usually calm leader couldn't contain himself in the face of the generous reward. His face flushed slightly with excitement, and the leader whispered, "It seems like God is helping us this time. Let's quickly capture Professor Lin Feng in return for our reward. Brothers, prepare your weapons, we want to capture him alive. Be careful, don't let your guns go off. Tony, report your exact location." Even after the leader calmed down a bit, there was still no response from the intercom. "Tunnel. What are you staring at? You don't want the reward, right? Answer me now." The leader's expression was tense. He was camouflaged in a patch of grass. For a moment, the only sound in the jungle was his heavy breathing. He turned to look at his other disguised subordinates. What is going on? The leader's eyes widened. He looked behind him and found that there was no one beside him. The 7 or 8 people he remembered disguised behind him had disappeared without a sound. Where are they? He couldn't even control his voice. The shock-filled tone of his voice startled a flock of birds in the jungle. How could a living person disappear in the blink of an eye? Just then, he heard the sound of branches breaking underfoot in the woods ahead. Who's there? The leader's body tensed with fear. There was no one around, only the sound of a breeze rippling leaves. The footsteps ahead of him grew clearer, as if they were getting closer. Chapter 99, No Escape. Chapter 99, Escape is Impossible. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 99, Escape is Impossible. The approaching man's footsteps were light and steady. The leader could tell that he had deliberately let himself hear his footsteps. Otherwise, with his skills, it would be easy for him to hide his footsteps. Faced with such a clear provocation, the leader's voice trembled. "You, who are you?" At this time, the famous mercenary leader was already a little panicked. After all, even a veteran of many battles had always worked as a team, but at this moment, there were no teammates in front or behind him. They had just disappeared from his side without him knowing when. This realization alone made him feel a little lost. The footsteps in front of him sounded like the voice of a devil in his ears. His heart was pounding, his mind was blank, and he had no idea what to do. Heavy breathing and a frantic heartbeat formed a deadly symphony in his ears. Threads of sunlight filtered through the leaves, piercing his eyes, blurring his vision. Sweat streamed down his forehead. He raised his gun again and demanded, "Who the hell are you?" he roared, his hand trembling as he hesitated to pull the trigger. Footsteps sounded again, this time right next to him. The leader trembled as he looked forward, only to see the silhouette of a figure clearly silhouetted against the shadows of the jungle. No. No more waiting. The leader was about to pull the trigger when he saw the person coming. A young man in mountaineering clothes was approaching him. He had a handsome face, a hint of a smile at the corners of his eyes. He looked at him calmly, neither surprised nor pleased. Just another climber, but it was Professor Lin Feng. It was his enormous reward. In an instant, the leader's heart went from fear and anxiety to ecstasy. The newcomer wasn't some unknown expert or a powerful organization, he was his target. And who cares about those inexplicably vanished subordinates? Dead or alive, their absence was just the right thing. It saved him the hassle of cleaning up the mess, and he could pocket the hefty reward. When luck strikes, it's truly unstoppable. The leader's hand trembled slightly as he held the gun. He looked at Lin Feng with intense excitement, his words brimming with intimidation. "Professor Lin Feng, what a coincidence. It's not safe for you to be alone in the forest. Why don't you come with me?" He spoke slowly, his gun pointed at Lin Feng's chest. The sheer amount of reward had overwhelmed his mind, causing him to forget all the irrationalities. How had his subordinates vanished without a word? Where had they gone? Why was Professor Lin Feng, seemingly so weak, able to wander freely through such a treacherous jungle? Perhaps a warning bell had rung in his mind, but for a moment, he chose to ignore it. All he had eyes for now was Lin Feng and his reward. Seeing the greed in the mercenary's eyes, Lin Feng couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Lin Feng smiled, raised his hands, and asked with a raised eyebrow, "Where are your teammates? Do you know where they went?" Those words hit the mercenary leader, whose eyes were fixed on money, like a hammer, sending a chill down his greedy brain. The mercenary's gaze turned to Lin Feng with a clearer look. He suddenly realized that Lin Feng was shrouded in mystery. A completely absurd thought crossed his mind. Could it be that my teammates were missing because of him? Was all this Lin Feng's doing? But was that even possible? He was just an ordinary man. Lin Feng took in the hesitation and struggle in the mercenary's eyes. A streak of golden light flashed through Lin Feng's pupils. In an instant, the mercenary leader, caught in those godlike eyes, was reduced to dust, fading into the dust of light. Lin Feng's eyes remained calm. Eliminating a mercenary leader who made a living by killing people wasn't enough to make him frown. Of course, he had his own agenda. At that moment, they were being watched by at least 3 different organizations. Each of these organizations, like MI8, could easily outshine the previous mercenary group. This mercenary group had been noticed by all the major powers almost as soon as they entered the forest. However, each organization was wary of the other, and no one wanted to be the first to fire the first shot, to expose their strength. After all, the situation was complex, with nearly every major organization in the world nestled within this obscure mountain. No one dared to take them lightly, let alone underestimate the enemy. Thus, this mercenary group had been operating under the noses of these major organizations for a long time. But, all of this was shattered when they witnessed what had just happened. What just happened? Did anyone see clearly? That was Lin Feng. What did he do? Oh my god. I only knew to be wary of the major powers, but no one told me Lin Feng was the most formidable. Professor Lin Feng deserves to be called by name by Lord Yangjian. Could he truly be resurrected from the ancient times? Quick! Retreat if you don't want to die. Don't provoke Lin Feng. None of us can stand up to him. At this moment, they discovered that all their communications equipment had lost signal. This was a devastating blow. Damn it! What the hell happened? Why did the communication equipment go down? No matter. Retreat, stay away from Lin Feng. If he doesn't see us, there might still be a chance. Hide your identities. If we provoke Lin Feng and he blames our country, it will be disastrous. The major forces that had been wary of each other just minutes ago were instantly routed without Lin Feng even having to mobilize a single soldier. They went from being wary of each other to supporting each other on the run, stumbling and fleeing in a state of disarray. The situation was utterly chaotic, and everyone's mind replayed the image of Lin Feng's instantaneous slaying of the mercenary leader. Only one thought remained in their minds: run. Run. The farther the better. Deep in the mountains, mercenaries, agents, and assassins from various countries, regions, and factions, unaware that they had no escape route. Everyone was trapped in the sure field centered around Lin Feng, unable to escape. Sure enough, Professor Lin Feng, the person China respects the most, is no ordinary person. We underestimated him. Our intelligence is inaccurate. Why does the information say that Professor Lin Feng has no fighting power? He can kill a person with just one glance. Tell me he has no fighting power. Professor Lin Feng's information has always been very mysterious. I'm afraid that the top leaders of China also have certain limitations in their understanding of him, not to mention us who were ordered to rush over to arrest him after watching the live broadcast. I dare say that mankind's understanding of Professor Lin Feng is just the tip of the iceberg. Now I just pray to stay alive. If there is still a chance to live, I will definitely avoid Professor Lin Feng when I see him in the future. Chapter 100 Lin Feng Can. Chapter 100, Lin Feng Can Do It, 2024-08-19. Author, Guigui Monster. Chapter 100, Lin Feng Can Do It. The most elite agents from several factions immediately and unanimously chose to evacuate. In fact, the moment they saw Lin Feng appear before the mercenaries, their first thought was that their mission was imminent. The agents sent here to invite Lin Feng must be the best in their respective countries. They were all eager to fight, confident that the mission would be accomplished. Even watching the mercenary team vanish into thin air didn't dampen their resolve. They were simply puzzled, not considering the possibility that Professor Lin Feng might be involved. That is until they saw a flash in Lin Feng's eyes. That golden light reminded them of the terror they had felt watching the live broadcast of the moon landing, when they were dominated by the destructive power of Lord Yangjian. Before they could understand why Lin Feng had that golden light in his eyes, the mercenary leader vanished before them. From that moment on, no one wanted to attack Lin Feng. No one wanted to, and no one dared. As if suddenly enlightened, everyone understood, Professor Lin Feng was not someone they could mess with. This is terrifying. Professor Lin Feng is no ordinary person. He knows about the prehistoric world because he's from it. Such a simple question, why didn't we understand it back then? If I'm still alive, I must report this crucial information. As everyone panicked, MI8's Agent 7's mind raced. He silently pondered what was unfolding. He was always calm and composed, and even in this situation, he remained focused on the mission. Just as everyone stumbled back, he stopped. William, aren't you leaving? Let's go too. We're almost alone now. Escape is the priority. Agent 7, William, shook his head, his icy blue eyes darkening. No, we're not leaving. I think we can wait and see. His resolute words, unsurprisingly, were met with a broken-hearted rebuttal from his companions. What are you waiting to see? If this keeps going on, we'll all die. Do you think we can contend with Lin Feng's terrifying power? Everyone looked at William excitedly, but their intense emotions didn't faze William in the slightest. William didn't look at them, but instead stared in Lin Feng's direction, speaking calmly. Calm down, maybe the situation isn't that bad. After all, we're just watching from afar, and no one knows what's really going on. If Lin Feng is truly that powerful, why didn't he confront us directly, instead of targeting a relatively weaker mercenary group? William's words calmed everyone down a bit. One of his colleagues said, William, stop keeping us in suspense at this point. What do you want to say? A smile played on William's lips, knowing he was close to convincing his companions, just as he always did. What I mean is, everything Lin Feng did just now seemed like it was done deliberately for our benefit. His words made everyone's breath catch. Several people exchanged glances, understanding dawning. You mean, this is just a ploy by Professor Lin Feng, to make us think he's powerful, and thus serve as a warning to others, right? William nodded, continuing. If that's the case, then it makes sense. A professor, he doesn't have much martial prowess, but he's got a sharp mind. I don't know what trick he pulled to make us see the mercenary reduced to ashes, but firstly, that's not his ability, and secondly, he might not be able to use it all the time. Oh, everyone suddenly understood. William's insight opened their minds, and a sudden flash of inspiration struck them. Right. Otherwise, why would he use that ability? If it's a killer move, shouldn't he use it last? Conserving strength is the smart thing to do, but using it right in front of us, it's like he's afraid we won't see, right? After all, Professor Lin Feng is so smart, he couldn't possibly not understand that. At this point, everyone's minds cleared. By this time, the other forces they had just confronted had almost all fled, and the people made up the majority of the few remaining. The situation couldn't be more favorable for them. Their gazes burned in Lin Feng's direction, their hearts filled with hope of victory. Looks like we'll be the victors this time, but just then, Lin Feng raised his head, his gaze piercing the jungle like an arrow. Everyone froze. Their faces, once rosy, paled in an instant. Retreat. Let's retreat. William's voice, steady as ever, trembled as he bellowed at his companions. Hurry, follow them, head west. The people who had calmly analyzed and persuaded their companions to stay seemed to have vanished. William now staggered, his body hunched, ready to flee. Seeing him, the others, waking from a dream, followed suit. William, worthy of being their leader, had always been the leader, from his initial composure to his current, panicked escape. None of them questioned William at this moment. Lin Feng's gaze just now was like that of a higher civilization looking down upon a lesser being. It wasn't just the arrogance that held him in his gaze, it was the overwhelming power that made their hair stand on end. Regardless of whether the golden light in Lin Feng's eyes could ever be used again, the important thing was that the man before them posed a threat. A deep-seated feeling took hold. If Lin Feng wanted to, they would all be reduced to dust. No one could pinpoint the basis for this, but they simply believed Lin Feng could do it. They evacuated quickly, abandoning even the heavier equipment. After all, in this life-or-death moment, who cared about such things? If someone were to look down from above, they would see that, with Professor Lin Feng as their center point, the more powerful members of the organization were fleeing westward in small groups. As they drew closer to Professor Lin Feng, solitary stragglers were also drawing closer. Most of them were out of touch with information, some hadn't seen Lin Feng's situation in time, while others, blinded by the bounty, were eager to try their luck. Meanwhile, the Chinese army's main force was rapidly approaching from the east, advancing in an encircling formation towards Lin Feng. At this moment, no one knew what was about to happen. Even in their daze, they were already in chaos, their fear making them lose their composure. If they had any ability before, they had now completely lost their fighting ability, and all they could think about was escaping. Lin Feng listened to the panicked footsteps of the troops running for their lives towards the west, and the corners of his lips curled up. If you want to catch me, you must be prepared. It's not that easy to escape now. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.